TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. It's your friendly neighborhood philosopher here, D Wood. And with me now, we've got Jai, Apologetics, and Daughter of Christ. How you guys doing? Yep. Hang on. Did I lose them? I accidentally clicked off their audio. What do I do here? There we go.
Oh,
Hey, wait a second.
good?
Do I actually have to have you guys on the... Okay, there we go. Can you talk?
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, that's weird. When I click, that's weird. When I click go live, if I didn't have you on the screen, it sends you to green room. Huh. Interesting.
See, no technical difficulties before, but now once we start, that's when they start.
Oh, I just didn't know that. I didn't know I had to have people up. That's interesting. Interesting. I guess that's for people doing their introductions if they don't want other people talking. Okay. All right. So how you guys doing?
Yeah, we're doing great. Thanks so much for having us on the channel.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. So, what's your guys' background? How'd you get interested in this kind of stuff?
Okay. All right, I'll start. So it's really I'm really happy to be on here with you because I actually when I got saved in my teenage years, the Lord introduced me to some ex-Muslims like pretty close into my walk with the Lord, like in the beginning years. So I found out about you like in my teenage years, and I've been watching you and keeping up with you since then. So this is to do a stream with you now. It's like it just feels amazing. I feel so honored to be with you. So essentially so once I was saved, I started to get introduced to a bunch of different people from different backgrounds, specifically a bunch of ex-Muslims, and they were getting a lot of objections from their family, from people around them in their communities, and I was trying to learn as well. So we were kind of all learning together, and so that's kind of how I got started with dealing with Islam in particular. But Daughter of Christ has a kind of different story.
Yeah, I'm actually an ex-Muslimah. And I came to the Lord about 7 years ago, met up with Hatun just as a sister. And that I knew before about problems in Islam, but through the work of Sister Hatun, I found out a lot about the Quran preservation lie. And she would have me on sometimes because I come from an Arabic background. So I was, shocked at the extent of it. I've joined forces now with Brother Jai, just to tackle this. We've been studying it for a long time.
And 1 second here, we have people in the chat going, we can't see them. Yes, not everyone shows their faces during live streams, Tara.
Yeah, because of like
some
what
people
you
have
said,
reasons. What's that?
Yeah,
it's very dangerous.
Yeah, dangerous for ex-Muslim and other reasons as well.
Yeah, Tara, are you a secret jihadi? No, just kidding. No, they might have thought it was a technical difficulty that I wasn't having you guys on the screen. No, some people have reasons for not being on the screen. And most of what we're talking about here, we're going to be going through some video clips, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to Jai and Daughter of Christ are going to be going through a presentation, bringing up a lot of information, and there's a reason. There's a reason for it. So just to give people a kind of overview background, some people are new here. For years, basically since I became a Christian and started interacting with Muslims, one of their main, if not the main, but definitely one of their top three arguments that I always heard for decades was that the Quran has been preserved miraculously, dot for dot, letter for letter. There's never been one single letter's difference between any two Qurans anywhere in the history of the Quran. And of course, when you hear this and you haven't investigated it, you're like, okay, well, I'm not sure that would prove that it's from God. I mean, there are other any book that you can point to right now, you could say has been perfect. Any modern book you could say is perfectly preserved. Anytime you find a manuscript that's 1,000 years old, you could say, oh, that manuscript has been preserved for 1,000 years. So it's like, what would it actually mean? But then eventually start looking into it. And with me, it was just me and Nabil, and we looked through we were just looking at the Muslim sources. Like you're reading Sahih Muslim, and you read about Abu Musa saying that 2 chapters came up missing because they hardened their hearts and they weren't reciting them enough. Or you read Sahih al-Bukhari and you read about Uthman having to burn piles of Qurans to cover up the differences and so on. And you just start getting that vibe like, I'm not sure about that stuff you guys are talking about with this perfect letter for letter preservation. Doesn't sound like that. Oh, what's this? Sunan Ibn Majah, 1944. Aisha's sheep ate verses of the Quran. What's going on? What's going on here? So it looks like it's a giant mess. And then so you start responding, and there are kind of a few different directions. Like I've always just quoted Muslim sources that talk about changes in the Quran or passages coming up missing. Then you have people who go to the manuscripts. So that would be like Dan Brubaker, and he has a video where he shows like 11 Quran variants on a single page of one manuscript of the Quran. Notice that one, if there were one variant on one page of one Quran, that would explode the myth that there's never been this sort of thing. So some people go and actually put the manuscript side by side and show, hey, this is not the same thing as this. And then, of course, you have people who talk about different versions of the Quran that are used in different parts of the world, even today. And so, they'll compare Hafs and Warsh and so on and show differences between them. And it's like, no matter how you look at this, you can't seriously claim perfect dot for dot, letter for letter preservation of the Quran. And what's interesting to me is like the Dawah community. So for years they say perfect dot for dot, letter for letter preservation. Then Hatun eventually shows up with 26 different Arabic Qurans at Speaker's Corner, puts them right in people's faces. And they, of course, go to the Dawah guys, all the Muslims there who get freaked out and they want to know what this is about. They go to the Dawah guys to explain this. They go to the same people who lied to them in the first place and said, you don't have any differences. They go to the exact same people and say, hey, explain this. And then they respond. They go, oh, yeah, it's just different accents because there are different accents and so on. And then they come back and they say, you see, yes, of course there are differences, but there are different accents. And then people show, no, actually, it's not different accents. And have you guys, I don't know, it's like lie. And then once that lie gets exposed, come up with another lie. And then once that lie gets exposed, then come up with another lie. And it's just amazing to me. The same community will keep going back to the same guys who keep telling them lies. Like they can't stay away. It's weird.
Exactly. I have the same experience, and I've had Muslims accuse me of when I show them different Qurans, like, no, that you're photoshopping that's not actually really the Quran. That those aren't 2 different Qurans. You're photoshopping one word in for another place.
I remember because I posted the clip where because people didn't really know. I didn't really know much about Hatun. I'd seen her at Speaker's Corner with Jay Smith, but I didn't know who she was. But when she initially shared all those different Qurans, when I posted the video, it got over 1 million views of just me showing her with all these different Qurans. And the responses I was getting was she printed those herself. Like Hatun has her own publication company, and all she does is make up Quran variants and print them. But that's how desperate they were to preserve this. But yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I wanted to verify what you were saying. That this became so ingrained in people's brains that when you show them, you put it in front of their faces. This is one. This is a different. Is that the same as that? You must have printed that. Why? Because I heard from my Dawah guys that there are no differences. Okay, well, you're supposed to conclude that your Dawah guys are lies, not that we're printing up our own Qurans and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, so they go from that usually that's like your average Muslim, probably like 99% of Muslims, honestly, that you run into, they're gonna say, no, there's no differences at all. And if you show them differences, they're like, no, you're lying. You're either you're doing Photoshop, you're editing. So then there's websites where you can actually play like the imams like reciting the different Qurans. So then you play them reciting it. They're like, no, that I had a Muslim tell me before that I was using a Christian website because the name of the website was called N Quran. So they were like, oh, no, N stands for Nasara. Like, they put the N on the houses in like Iraq, like ISIS would put an N on the houses. Like N stands for Nasara, the Christians. Like we've heard all sorts of crazy things. And they're saying, no, you guys are just editing these recitations together. And in another verse, he's saying another word, but you're putting it in here. I'm like, dude, we don't have that much time on our hands to do all that stuff. So that it just gets, then eventually, like you said, there are different levels to this, and they get a little they could do some research on it, they ask about it, and they're like, yeah, they're just accents, they're just different dialects. That gets debunked. Then they come back and they say, okay, there are differences, but they don't contradict each other. They just kind of add each other to meaning. They, add glory and magnify God in different ways, or they complete the story. And then you show them contradictions, and they're just like, just kind of just repeating, no, you're lying, and go back and forth.
Yeah, the latest spin, the latest lies from the Dawah gangs is that, yes, there are differences, but show me one contradiction. They don't contradict. They add to the meaning. They make it deeper, more beautiful. And this is no problem at all. It's just another way that Muhammad allowed them in their ahruf to express the Quran. And
Right.
that's the latest lie.
Yeah, and it's so you guys are going to give a presentation again. That's the thing that baffles me most. If I had, matter of fact, let's suppose that Christian apologists had spent years going around saying that the Bible, they've always said the Bible's been well preserved, and atheist scholars will tell you that. But imagine they'd been going around claiming that there are no textual variants anywhere in the history of the manuscripts of the New Testament. That would be false. They could. Right. The position of scholars has been there are textual variants. The vast majority of textual variants are either meaningless, or there's something that couldn't go back to the original. In other words, that a textual variant can pop up in the 12th century because some scribe makes a mistake and so on. They don't take that seriously. They don't consider it what's called viable, meaning there's no way this goes back to it doesn't appear until the 12th century or something like that. But the vast majority are just meaningless or non-viable. Meaningless meaning it's a spelling difference or something like that. There are a small minority of cases where it's meaningful in the sense that it would change the meaning of the verse. And there are variants that are viable in terms of you don't know what the original manuscript reading would have been. But there are no cases where this actually affects basic Christian doctrine or practice. You never find a variant where Jesus doesn't die. You never find a variant where Jesus isn't Son of God. You never find variants that actually affect Christian doctrine. And so, but amazingly, the Muslims who are actually somewhat honest about the textual variants, like Shabir Ali, acknowledges that you have these different versions of the Quran around the world, but he'll say, yeah, but it doesn't affect Islamic doctrine. It's like, wait a minute, that's all you guys had to say from the beginning, and we wouldn't have thought you were liars. You could have said, if they had said, hey, the Quran's been pretty well preserved. Yeah, you have you had some problems along the way, but we basically have what goes back to the original Quran, and it's been well preserved. And you do have some differences, but it doesn't really affect Islamic doctrine or practice. We would have had discussions about preservation and so on, but we wouldn't have thought liars. Instead, they said no, perfect preservation right down to the letter. And then when it was pointed out, no, it's not, then they changed it to accents, and no, it's not. And then they're still modifying it. They're still modifying their explanation, and whatever happens, they just can't be honest. It's like it's impossible to just say, because once they're honest, then what they would have to say if they were completely honest with the evidence is, anytime you have a book being copied by human beings for centuries, you're going to have textual variants. And so the Quran and the Bible are in that respect in the same boat, meaning once you have human beings involved, human beings are going to have things like spelling differences and so on. But they don't. They have to have the Quran in this separate category, and the only way you can get the Quran in this separate special category is if you lie about it, and so they have to keep lying.
Exactly. Yeah, and exactly, like, and to your point about if there is like this original book or anything, like we have originals for like Sumerian tablets. Like we still have like 4,000-year-old tablets originally engraved and carved, and scholars, Near Eastern scholars they study those till today. You see them in museums and things. These are the originals. What does that mean? But, yeah, it must mean it's from Allah.
It's a miracle. Yeah. So, right. Yeah, and that's a good point. If you have a tablet that survived thousands of years, following their argument, you'd have to say those are the inspired word of Allah. What's interesting is all this is, for years, I've been using a quote when I give presentations on the Quran. I give quotes from Muslim apologists and scholars over the years who've claimed perfect dot for dot, letter for letter preservation to show what the claim is. Before I would give those quotations, and then I would go into just what the Muslim sources say about how sloppy, what a messy process the preservation of the Quran was. But what was amazing is for years I quoted Yasser Qadhi, and I didn't know this was Sheikh Yasser Qadhi's dad up until a few months ago or something like that. But I didn't know this was Yasser Qadhi's dad. But this is a quote from his book, 130 Evident Miracles of the Quran. And this is absolutely amazing to me because he makes the claim not just about what Muslims believe. He says that non-Muslims agree on this. But he says, here's the quote from 130 Evident Miracles of the Quran. Muslims and non-Muslims both agree that no change has ever occurred in the text of the Quran. It is a miracle of the Quran that no change has occurred in a single word, a single letter of the alphabet, a single punctuation mark, or a single diacritical mark in the text of the Quran during the last 14 centuries. During the last 14 centuries, not a single letter's difference. And of course, so that's Yasser Qadhi. His son, Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, we have clips. We have all kinds of videos of him where he was telling, and this is, again, it's one thing if someone is saying it and doesn't know better. If your average Muslim tells me the Quran's been perfectly preserved, I don't think he's lying to me. He's wrong, but I don't think he's deliberately deceiving me. He's just passing on what he heard from his parents and so on, and he thinks it's true. Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, he knew. We know he knew because he was telling completely different things. When he's talking to students of knowledge, he was telling them, yes, we have all these differences, brothers. Yes, we have them, and we have to try and figure this out. And when he's talking to popular audiences, it's perfect dot for dot. You will never find any two Quran manuscripts with one single letter of difference because it's been perfectly preserved. And it's just so, these are the guys who are lying. It's like, if that were the case, if Christian apologists had been doing this, if Christian apologists in general had been saying there's not a single letter's difference between any two New Testament manuscripts in the entire history of the New Testament, and then it got exposed, I would have trouble going back to those same Christian apologists and saying, okay, now now non-believers, non-Christians are exposing that line. They're showing us manuscripts showing that has all been a lie, that the entire Christian apologetics community has been lying for all these years. How do we answer them now? Oh, just go and tell them it's different accents or something like that. I would never trust these guys again in my life, ever. I couldn't bring myself to trust people who keep feeding me lies. It's just, so that's why it's amazing to me that you have these Dawah guys and they tell everyone perfect preservation, dot for dot, like this claim of Yasser Qadhi and of his son, that there is not a single letter's difference between any two Quran manuscripts. I don't know what his dad knew, but Sheikh Yasser Qadhi literally wrote the book on sciences of the Quran. He knew that was a lie. He knew there were differences, and he was telling them. And then when people find out about them, they'll go back to the same Dawah guys and the same scholars. Oh, how do we explain the fact that you told us perfect dot for dot, letter for letter preservation, and the unbelievers actually showed us that what you were saying was incorrect? What do we say now? Oh, go out and say that it's just accents. And it's like, what is this? Is this a lie factory? Dawah is like a lie factory.
Yeah, it is. It is. And you know something, Muslims have known about this for, there are like books dating back to like 1,000 years. There's one
like الانتصار للقرآن.
So there's a scholar from like the 10th century, al-Baqalani, and he said he's writing this book that Dr. Christ just mentioned, and it's refuting like the unbelief, like, you know, people who considered to be heretics, like the Shia. They were using the variants of the Quran to say, you guys are saying that the Quran is preserved and is uncorrupt, but you guys have all these different readings of it, all these, like, you have all the qira'at and things like that. And it's because, you know, the Shia, they reject the hadith about 7 ahruf and things like that. So they only think that there's one, you know, harf, one original kind of reading. It was only revealed in one way. So they were using these variants in the 10th century, like to argue, look, you guys are saying that there's only like this preserved Quran, but actually you guys have so many different versions of it. What's going on? And so he's writing this book to try to answer them, respond to them. So what I'm saying is Muslim scholars knew this for like 1,000+ years. They knew ever since the dawn of Islam, but for some reason they lie to people, and I've heard different people give different numbers to this. I've heard like what's that guy's the guy with the funny Mufti Abu Layth, and then Shadi Nasser. I've heard them say it's like this kind of myth about one Quran. They kind of say like maybe 200 or so years old or so. Like this is like goes back that far. So before that though, and you have vast scholarship in Islamic history documenting these variant readings, arguing about like which ones are correct, which ones are right, which ones are wrong. So they know about all this stuff, but for some reason, somehow, some way, this became the the standard narrative.
The biggest secret.
Yeah.
And even in some countries now, they actually block the different Qurans to keep this lie. Like in Morocco, they ban Hafs from the mosques to stop people from being confused. And in Saudi, they ban the Warsh from their mosques.
During the Tarawih prayers.
Yeah, during Ramadan, during the Tarawih prayers, because they know that's when Muslims come to actually listen to the whole Quran during Ramadan. And we recently played a clip of Sheikh Fawzani. He was asked about this. What if an imam reads a different Quran, a different recitation? And he said, they are not allowed to do that because that will cause confusion. They don't actually allow people to read the different Qurans to their congregations.
And that's interesting because what Jai was just pointing out, that you do have these discussions. I mean, you have Abu Ubaid's Kitab Fada'il al-Quran, which isn't very long, but it's a list of Quran variants that have come down to it. You have the famous quote from Ibn Umar, where he was first generation. He's a companion of Muhammad, but he goes out and he starts talking to the next generation. These guys were saying they'd memorized the entire Quran. He said, don't say you've memorized the entire Quran. You don't even know what the Quran is anymore. Because so much of it's been lost. Just say you've memorized what's left. You've memorized what remains. Then you have Ibn Abi Dawud's Kitab al-Masahif. That was one big book on the Quran differences. And so you're right that you go back and it was normal in the past. And so you'd think, okay, this is just a modern lie, like the scientific miracles. It's something they came up with recently for apologetic purposes. But at the same time, it is connected to the earlier stages, just because when Uthman is told about all these differences and that Muslims are arguing about what the authentic, the correct reading is, the solution is burn it all.
Right.
And it's like the appearance of unity, the appearance of just having one Quran is more important than the truth of the matter. So truth is secondary to the unity and the consensus. So if you have disagreements, just destroy those disagreements and pretend there's just this one thing. So it's weird where for centuries they talked about the differences, but Caliph Uthman gives the example that no, it's actually more important sometimes to hide the truth.
Exactly. And like Yasser Qadhi says, like, the hadith about the ahruf, like he talks about like Ubay, there's a different version with Ubay, and he has these doubts, and he says, well, I haven't had so much doubt in Islam I haven't had this much doubt since before I became a Muslim. And that was at the realization that there's different readings, different versions of the Quran being taught in his time, and it caused confusion from the very beginning. Like Yasser Qadhi notes that in the interview. Hijab.
Yeah, in fact, and again, guys, we're about to go into Jai and Daughter of Christ are about to give a presentation. They're going to give a lot of details. So, guys, if you want to actually, and this is, ladies and gentlemen, this is what needs to happen. People need to learn how to respond to the Dawah lies, because it's just a sad state of affairs where their Dawah guys are going to keep lying to them, and we're going to have to keep exposing the latest lie. This is going to keep going on and on and on until the people, there's a light switch moment and they realize, wait a minute, we cannot trust these guys anymore. They lied to us. Then we went right back to them after their lie was exposed, and we asked for the next lie, and then we got the next lie, and then we went out and shared that lie, and then that got exposed. So we went back to the same guys, and they gave us our new lie. It's a rough situation, and you think, why are we wasting our time? If these guys really want to be lied to this badly, why are we trying to help them? Well, we got to try and help them anyway. Just got to be relentless, and no matter how long it takes, have to keep exposing the lies, because it eventually does catch on. It's just like with the perfect preservation lie or the scientific miracles lie. We spend decades correcting these things, and finally they start changing their story and acknowledging that it's not correct. So change does happen. Progress is made. It just takes a while. But before we go into the presentation, we're going to watch a little bit from our good friend Sheikh Yasser Qadhi. Anytime you guys want, I'll probably pause it at various spots. I have like 3 minutes of clips where here Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, this is from his famous Holes in the Narrative. There were two main events. There were two main events in destroying the myth of perfect dot for dot, letter for letter preservation. That was one, Hatun showing up with all the different Qurans that she said she bought these at various Muslim bookstores around the world. And she started noticing that there are differences. So Hatun, and then this eventually sent the Dawah community into a kind of panic. People found out that Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, behind the scenes, was saying something very different from what he was saying in public. In public, he was saying perfect dot for dot, letter for letter preservation. Behind the scenes, he was saying, no, we've got some problems here. And so Muhammad Hijab, tactical genius that he is, decided to get Sheikh Yasser Qadhi on with him. And Muhammad Hijab really thought that Yasser Qadhi was going to explain all this and everything was going to make perfect sense. And it did not go that way. It just didn't go that way. But Hijab was apparently thinking, because guys, they're talking about something beyond just dot for dot, letter for letter preservation. They got to the topic of whether you can explain the differences in terms of things that all go back to Muhammad. And the famous Holes in the Narrative comment from Sheikh Yasser Qadhi was about that there are holes in the scholar's narrative, that we can explain these things. He was saying there are holes in that narrative too. And so we're going to watch a little bit of it. I'll pause it a couple of times. You guys can add any, you could comment on this. Cause I'm legitimately confused how you can view on YouTube. Anyone can go there. How you can watch clips of Sheikh Yasser Qadhi telling popular audience, perfect preservation, dot for dot, just like my dad used to say. Perfect dot for dot, letter for letter presentation. Not one letter's difference between any two Qurans anywhere in the history since the time of Uthman. And then you can see other clips of him saying behind the scenes, of course there are differences. You can go to different parts of the world. We use different Qurans and so on. And there are holes in there. You can see all of that and then still go to a Yasser Qadhi lecture and think you're getting the truth. Think that you can trust this guy. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. It's weird. It's like the community accepts that Islam lies. You know what I mean? It's like they accept that lying is part of Islam, so it doesn't bother them, right? We don't accept it. So if a pastor or something like that were exposed as a liar, we wouldn't trust him. You're not supposed to be lying. When the community keeps going back to people who are known liars, it's like this is just part of Islam. It's wild stuff, man. It's wild stuff.
Yeah.
But let's take a little look at Sheikh Yasser Qadhi here.
Every single student of knowledge knows, who studies Ulum al-Quran, that the most difficult topics are ahruf and qira'at.
You guys want to break down what ahruf and qira'at are?
Yeah, sure. So ahruf refers to the hadith of the seven ahruf, where Muhammad said that the Quran was revealed in these, no one really knows what ahruf means. So sometimes when you see it in like hadith translations, they'll just leave it, like transliterate it as ahruf. And I think Arthur Jeffrey translated it as modes. So a lot of people use that as a translation, but no one really knows what it means. Muslims have said that there's over 40 opinions as to what ahruf means. At the end of the day, Muslims just don't know at all what it means. So there's something in this kind of category of variation within the Quran that is called ahruf. No one knows what that is. Some people say, these are tribal dialects and things like that, but that is shut down by Muslim scholars, because they point out that in the hadith about the seven ahruf, you have Omar and Hisham, who are both Qurayshi, both from the same tribe, and yet there's differences there where Omar is, grabbing him by the neck and drag him to Muhammad and basically ready to kill him. And he said, no, actually, it was revealed like that, and it was revealed like that, and it was actually revealed in 7 different ways, 7 different ahruf. So that's ahruf. And then,
but just pause right there before Qira'at. So this is something that goes way back, that you can actually read about in the hadith, but you still find the exact same problem of If you're Muslim and you think, oh, these guys, this human memory, Allah revealing it, and human memory are these perfect tools for reliably preserving large amounts of text. No one else in the history of humanity is going to agree to that. But in Islam, they think that's the case. But so this is during the time of Muhammad. During the time of Muhammad, Umar finds out this guy's reciting the Quran differently. They flip out. It gets brought before Muhammad. Hey, we are reciting things differently. And then Muhammad, of course, says, yeah, it's fine. Allah revealed all this. Allah revealed it in these different ways, which should have been a clue. Wait a minute. You're telling us that Allah has been revealing the Quran in these different ways for all these years, and this is the first we're hearing about it? Like, wouldn't the Muslim community have known this at some point if Allah is revealing the Quran in different ways and Muhammad is delivering the Quran to different ways to different people so that they're memorizing things differently? Like, it's interesting that the explanation only comes after the problem, right?
Yeah.
And so I would regard this as ad hoc. You're coming up with your explanation afterwards to in sort of like trying to make it fit. But so you have the Muhammad's excuse for why this guy is reciting the Quran differently from that guy is Allah revealed it in these different ways, different ahruf. And then later on, of course, you have Muslims who are confused. Wait a minute, the Quran's revealed in 7 ahruf. What's that? And then you get the lie. The lie has to come in to calm people down, to make them not doubt their religion. And so the lie is, but there were different dialects, and so people spoke different dialects, so the Quran was revealed in different dialects to accommodate different dialects. And you're pointing out that's a lie because the two people that's dispute arose with were from the exact same tribe and spoke the exact same dialect.
Right.
Okay. All right. So, but again, we see the problem that goes all the way back to that. So anyway, that's what Yasser Qadhi means with ahruf. And as Jai pointed out, there are dozens of different explanations. No one knows what the different ahruf are. It was understood that there are some kind of differences in the way people are reciting the Quran. And Muhammad's explanation was it was revealed in 7 different ways. All right, so that's the ahruf. And then he mentioned qiraat. What's that about?
It's just interesting, David, that you mentioned that it's ad hoc and the explanation came after the fact that there were differences. The reason for that, in my opinion, also the Western opinion, the non-Muslim opinion about these, is because Muhammad actually forgot. He forgot revelation, and we know that from different hadiths, and also from the Quran itself. In Surah 87, verse 6 and 7, Allah himself says, you won't forget except for what I will, except for what Allah wills. So it's actually a cover-up. These 7 modes, 7 different ahruf is a cover-up for the differences that he knew because of his poor memory, that he would recite it one way to one companion and then a different way to another companion. So that's why I wanted to add before.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing because there's such an obvious explanation, right? It's such an obvious explanation, right? Like, hey, I delivered that verse to you years ago, and you guys memorized it and so on. And then we got this new guy, this new convert, and he's asking me about that passage. I deliver it to him. I'm old. My memory is not perfect. I'm old and my memory is not perfect. They could have settled it. Thank you, Umar, for reminding me of the way I revealed it originally. I made a mistake. Sorry about that. My bad. No, Allah revealed it in 7 different ways. Okay, and then people run with this. But it's the same. This is what I'm talking about when I say these problems. The reason they have problems now is because the pattern has been set for them. So in the case of like just covering up all the differences, you see that pattern with Caliph Uthman. But then with coming up with explanations that somehow this all goes back and it's all the same thing somehow, which they use with the qiraat. So somehow the different qiraats somehow all go back, even though you look at the differences, like it's obvious what happened. This is just some guy made a mistake. Some guy made a mistake. This letter kind of looks like that letter. The guy made a mistake. This word kind of looks like that word. A guy made a mistake. The dot goes here, the dot goes there, and you end up with a different word. Okay, they didn't know. It's easy to account for these things, but instead they have to just make it up and say, oh yes, this all goes back. This all goes back to the original. Interesting. It's wild stuff.
Yeah. And so like there are instances where you have like the entire, and like all, like, you know, different readings, they're almost identical except for, like, let's say like one word, and then it's like you said, there's like one vowel difference. So what Muslims want us to believe is like, you know, Gabriel came one time, everything exactly the same except vowel difference here, E vowel instead of an A vowel or something like that. It's like that does that really sound more likely than just some scribe just kind of made an error and one guy put like an E instead of an A or something?
Right.
So
guys,
odds,
I want people to understand this. So you're pointing out that some of the differences between two different versions of the Quran might just be a different letter, which gives you a different word or something like that. Muslim Dawah guys want to explain that now and saying, yes, it was revealed in both of these ways. It was revealed in both of these ways so that the meanings complement each other and so on. And what we're pointing out, that one of the main takeaways, guys, if you don't take away anything else from this entire live stream, this is one of the few takeaways that you absolutely must keep in your mind, how they explain things in ways where they kind of preserve the lie, because preserving the lie, the myth, is more important than the actual truth. Guys, as what Jai just pointed out, what's more likely? If you didn't know, what's more likely here? That Gabriel revealed this to Muhammad and then comes back at some later point and reveals it again, but has one letter change or one tiny word change. And so he comes back and he says, now I want you to go reveal it to that group over there with this one letters change, Muhammad. I want you to do that. What's more likely, that or that some scribe at some point got the wrong letter? That's the point. It's pretty easy to understand it, and we wouldn't even have a problem with that. Human beings screw things up. Human beings mess things up. I could take any book in this room and copy it by hand. I would mess up. I would make a mistake. That doesn't change the reliability of the book that I'm talking about. It's about me. But they can't grant that there could even possibly be a human being who could make a mistake, because then and the reason is because you pointed out they didn't have a problem with this in the past, but now they spent decades saying perfect preservation is the criterion, and any textual variance in the history of the New Testament shows that God is not protecting it. And since they've spread that lie, and I would say that's just idiotic, like if you have a scribal, if a scribe makes a mistake, that shows that God has not preserved the book. Okay, that's the criterion that you guys have laid down now. They can't deal with the fact that a scribe would make an error, because that would they've brainwashed their entire community thinking that shows that God isn't with the book. And
exactly.
now they're stuck with it. So now they have to explain everything and say it somehow all goes back to Muhammad. What about all these different? Yeah, they all go back. What you saying that Allah was revealing it through Gabriel in all these different ways and all these different? Yeah, he revealed all these different things. And it sounds put it this way: the more variance you pile up, the more insane this explanation sounds.
Exactly. And when you talk about, you know, variants of the Bible, I used to only, when I first learned about this topic, about the different Qurans and different variant readings and things like that, I used to only bring this up as sort of a defense whenever Muslims would say, oh, you guys have textual variants. And then I noticed when I started using it as a defense to that, like, okay, well, let's enter our question here. This is the Christian response to that. Now, how do you account for these differences? And when I found out is when I started, you know, saying that as just as a defense, I realized that actually became also an effective way to just even witness to Muslims at all, like as something to lead with, because it's something that they're just lied, like we've been saying this whole time, like they're just lied to about this from like the very early ages, that they're Muslims, their whole lives they're lied to, and then when they're, you know, confronted about the topic, they go, like you say, they go to the same exact people who lie to them and then they just lie to them some more and some more and some more. So I found it's a very effective way to kind of, like, you know, break that barrier, you know, that stumbling block that they might have. Like, okay, if they lied to you about this, what else could they have lied to you about? Well, they lied to you about Jesus not dying. They lied to you about Jesus not being the Son of God. All these other things. So I use it kind of like as like a, you know, just kind of breaking the ice with that other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, guys, and so this is another, because what, you know, not everyone is going to remember a lot of what is shared in a long live stream, but one of the takeaways is what Jai was just saying, how you would use this. Jai and Daughter of Christ are going to be going through some variants in the text of the Quran. One, you want to get the big picture about the history of the Quran, but two, you want to learn some specific variants. Pick whichever one you like best or whatever one you're most comfortable with. Learn that And when you're having a discussion with Muslims, bring that up. Hey, is this the same as this? And then what you want to get to, there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger picture. Why do your Dawah guys, why do your leaders tell you one thing when it's obviously not true? You're looking for, again, it's a light switch moment, like click.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't trust it. It might take, it's not going to happen after one example. Sometimes this is something that could take years. Eventually, wow, I cannot trust these guys. And if I can't trust them about what they said about the Quran, if I can't trust what they said about Muhammad, if they told me one thing about Muhammad and then I hear from Christians and atheists and other people that these things aren't true, and I look it up and it's actually the Christians and the atheists who are telling me the correct information, and my leaders have been lying to me, maybe I just can't trust these leaders I've been following my entire life. I need to go and look into this for myself. And that is someone who's on his way out of Islam. So again, before we go on, and then we're going to jump into the presentation. I know you're going to be covering more of this later, but just in a nutshell, so we have the ahruf. No one knows what they are. Goes back as an explanation of Muhammad for differences. What about the qiraat?
Okay, so this relationship he's talking about between ahruf and qira'at. So this is where it gets a little complicated, and this is why he said that there's holes in the standard narrative, because you have different scholarly opinions as to what the ahruf are and whether they continue to exist or not. So, for example, someone like At-Tabari, they say like, Uthman actually he burnt 6 of the 7 ahruf, and there's only one, the singular of ahruf is harf. There's only one harf left. There's only one left. And so he goes into like a long kind of detailed explanation for, so if 6 of the 7 were destroyed, how does that jive with the Quran being preserved? And he gives this whole kind of take on it. And that's one position. Then you have another position that says, some ahruf exist insofar as they're compatible with the script that Uthman used, the undotted kind of rasam, the script that he used. And there's different there's more takes on that as well. But there's so the different qira'ats are these readings that came about either from the Uthmanic ambiguity of the text, like you say, you can read it in different ways, have different vowels here or there. And there's also something called canonical readings, which are ones that agree with the Uthmanic script and things like that, and 3 other criterion. But essentially, they have to agree with the rasam, except in some cases, there's about 40 differences where you have actual words being omitted or being added, not vowels, but actual words. And then you have what are called non-canonical readings, also called qira'at as well, that are things that where they just add in completely like extra sentences, take away sentences, like the famous reading in that says that Muhammad was a father to them.
Mm-hmm.
That phrase doesn't actually appear in the Quran, the Hafs Quran today.
Yeah, so that would be considered like a non-canonical reading. So these readings or qira'at are readings that go back to different companions or to different people that are trying to figure out what does this Uthmanic text say. Some scholars say that they were using their kind of scholarly opinion ijtihad for kind of like discerning like what is this text saying, how do you vocalize it. But Muslims today will say that all these canonical ones are actually divinely inspired. But that's going to be kind of what our presentation sheds light on. We're going to be talking about how do the early Muslims view these qira'at, these readings.
All right, so let's go back to Sheikh Uthman. And guys, those of you who are watching, so this is Muhammad Hijab trying to get Sheikh Yasser Qadhi to explain how Muslims don't need to be worried that this myth is somehow unraveling. Sheikh Yasser Qadhi is going to clear things up. But even in this brief comment, like one of the most difficult things is ahruf and qira'at. Guys, if the standard Dawah lie were true, perfect preservation, dot for dot, letter for letter, how would anything be difficult? You wouldn't have any difficulty. So even when he's saying this, one of the most confusing, difficult things is ahruf and qira'at, what are you talking about? What do you even mean? What do you mean? This even as he starts, this makes no sense in light of what Dawah guys have been saying for many years here. But let's go ahead and listen to Sheikh Yasser Qadhi a bit.
Every single student of knowledge knows, who studies ulum al-Quran, that the most difficult topics are ahruf and qira'at.
I need to just let him talk because I don't want to stop. But people, don't miss this. Every single student of knowledge, everyone who's actually learning, knows this is a very confusing issue, and we're trying to figure this out. What is it? What does that mean? It means that every educated person on this issue knows they've got a huge problem here.
Yes.
And that every single educated Muslim knows that this nonsense about perfect dot for dot, letter for letter presentation is complete nonsense. Every single educated Muslim knows this. He just said it. And yet what were all these guys telling the average Muslim? Perfect dot for dot, letter for letter preservation from the time of Muhammad. Bunch of, my goodness, I don't know how you go on believing these guys. It's crazy.
And the concept of ahruf and the reality of ahruf and the relationship of the Uthmanic Mus'haf with the ahruf and the preservation of the ahruf. Is it 1? Is it 3? Is it 7? And the relationship of the qira'at to the ahruf. This is a topic that...
this guy sounds really confused.
Yeah,
when you're
Go ahead.
So there's actually a hadith that does say that there are 3 ahruf as well.
Oopsie.
So there's one that says that there's 7, and there's one that says that there's 3, but they don't know what ahruf means in the first place. So it's like, is it 1? Is it 3? Is it 7?
Well, 1 if the 6 were burnt.
Yeah.
And it's amazing given how they criticize the doctrine of the Trinity. It's 1, and it's 3, and it's 7, and it's all the same, and it's 10. And it's amazing.
Right.
Beginning student of knowledge, you're like, what is all of this going on here? When you go a little bit more, you look that when you're the beginning student of knowledge, you're like, what is all of this going on here?
So when you find out that there are all these differences, especially when you've been told all your life, one Quran perfectly preserved, you're like, what is this mess? But then you get educated, and here's what he says.
You go a little bit more, you learn to simply memorize what your teachers say and regurgitate it out. And you don't fully comprehend. When you do what...
So step 2. So at first you're totally confused. Wait a minute, I thought there was only one Quran, and then you find out, no, there are actually tons of differences in the Quran. And so you're confused. But then you go to your scholars, and they say, yes, this can all be accounted for in ahruf and kirat, and all goes back to Muhammad. And so, you think, this all works, we're fine. And then you keep studying.
Don't fully comprehend. When you do a deep dive is when things get very, very awkward and difficult. And this isn't new. This is from the time of the Sahaba. This is...
Isn't this funny? This is exactly what you were saying, Jai, that this isn't new. This isn't new. This goes way back. This confusion goes way back. And he's saying, you do a deep dive and you find out the responses that you've memorized from your scholars. This is actually a big problem. Guys, again, everyone is watching. If the claims of people like let me pull up the quote again. Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, Muslims and non-Muslims both agree that no change has ever occurred in the text of the Quran. It is a miracle of the Quran that no change has occurred in a single word, a single letter of the alphabet, a single punctuation mark, or a single diacritical mark in the text of the Quran during the last 14 centuries. If that claim were true, not one letter, not one punctuation, not one dot of difference in the entire history of the Quran. If that claim were true, would you have this confusion here? Would you have your scholars freaking out and say, what is this? What is this mess? Roof and Kira, what is this? What is this? No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. What does it take for you guys to realize that you're being lied to? Like what? Like I would need a fraction of this to say I would never trust this guy again, or the entire Dawah community. I would need a fraction of this. You guys are just buried in it and you keep believing them. What is this? What is this stuff? Go ahead. Good. Sorry, guys.
Do you think his dad disowned him after he said that, Yasser Qadhi?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you just wonder whether his dad knew he was lying or not. But it is a situation where I think probably the reason that Sheikh Yasser Qadhi went on saying it for years after he knew it was false was probably just, I don't want to expose my dad as a liar.
Right.
Maybe that's where it comes from. Muslims don't.
Yeah, I mean, imagine your dad is one of the guys who champions this argument and puts it out in book form, champions this argument around the world, and then you go to college and you find out that's all false. It's completely false. It's like obviously false. And this is what your dad's been telling. Like, what do you do? What do you do in that weird situation? It's like, I hope he's not going to honor kill me or something.
Yeah, I just can't wrap my head around it either. Like he's literally saying, okay, you're at this beginner level. It's all confusing. What's going on here? You were taught there's only one Quran, no differences. Muhammad's time till today, no differences at all. Anywhere you go in the world, there's only one Quran being recited, no matter where you go. And then he's like, you go to this other level, this next level, and then you just sort of regurgitate what your scholars say, and you just repeat what they say. And then the next level is you realize that your scholars lied to you. Mm-hmm. It's like, I know I just can't wrap my head around this, how this is not like problematic or, to these people, like to Muslims.
Yeah, it's like tiramisu, these layers of lies, right? It's you're a beginning student of knowledge. You find out, oh, I heard all my life one Quran, perfect preservation. That was a lie. So everyone, my family, I mean, even though they weren't deliberately lying, they're just saying things that are false. But my entire community has filled my head with something that is completely false, and it's shocking. Oh no, what do I do with all this? Then, okay, I'll go to the scholars. And the scholars, okay, now memorize these responses. Okay, yes. It's all just ahruf and kirat, and it all goes back to Muhammad. Okay, now we've solved this. And then you find out that's a lie. It's like, wait a minute, the entire community lied, and then all the scholars lied, and now I'm finding out that there are some problems. This is Yasser Qadhi talking to Muhammad Hijab, explaining how things work in Islam with the Quran. Like, I don't know. This is wild stuff.
Not a joke, brothers and sisters.
I meant to mention this as well, about ahruf and qira'at. This is a very important note. So when I was first learning about this topic, and I would use this in interactions with Muslims, I was, talking to a Muslim about it, and he's like, oh yeah, well we just, I was showing him like, here's hafs and here's warsh, and he's like, oh yeah, those are just the ahruf. And so he got me thinking, wait, so you're saying that these are actually the ahruf? And then I wasn't until later when I started to do more research on this, I realized that those Muslim scholars say that if there's one thing we know about the ahruf, because we don't know anything about them, but if there's one thing we know, it's that they're not the qira'at. They're not, those two are not, they're not the same thing. So a lot of times Muslims will say like, oh, okay, you have like hafs, warsh, qalun, all these different versions, and like, yeah, those are just the different ahruf. No, they're not the same thing. And Muslim scholars have said, we have quotes from like Jalaluddin Suyuti, for example. He quotes different scholars who say that the scholars all agree that the 7 readings, which later became the 10 readings, that those 7 readings, the 7 qira'at, are not the 7 ahruf. And it's only the ignorant masses who think that is the case. So a lot of Muslims will just kind of think, okay, 7 readings, 7 ahruf, and those are the same thing. They're not. And we'll get into that more in the presentation, but I forgot that's an important note as well.
Oh, by the way, Farid made that mistake.
Yeah, Farid
made that mistake.
Oh, Farid made that? Wait a minute. I thought Farid knew what he was talking about.
Yeah,
he confused the ahruf and the qira'at.
Yeah, I had a discussion with him once on this topic, and he said, "Oh yeah, we'll have another discussion about it." Muslim offered, to host on his podcast and things like that. He never got back in touch with me, but yeah, we did have that discussion recorded though, and we do plan to publish it. Because we just got this new channel, so we're trying to reproduce some of our old content on there. But we will get that out there. But yeah, he does actually confuse these topics, and he is probably like the best that Muslims have on this in terms of like online Dawah guys. But he's also the one that leaked the Yasser Qadhi stuff as well.
Yeah,
so
they were calling him Farid leaks. So guys,
exactly. Yeah.
Again, Farid. So, matter of fact, he acknowledged that Yasser Qadhi was lying, right?
Right.
Yeah. So he played my video where I pointed out, like, you have 2 clips from around the same time frame with Yasser Qadhi when he's speaking to students of knowledge. It's, yes, we have different Qurans in different parts of the world. And I'm not just talking about different accents or something like that. It's not what I'm talking about. Talking about different letters, different words, and so on. So he's saying that. And then when he's talking to a popular level audience, perfect preservation, perfect dot for dot, letter for letter preservation. And I pointed out, like, what's going on here? And Farid's like, he's lying. Yep. Yeah. Sheikh Yasser Qadhi's lying. So Farid has been a bit more honest, but you're saying that, and then Farid is the one who leaked the private messages from Sheikh Yasser Qadhi's community with Muslims. He leaks these messages, and that's what leads to the holes in the narrative interview. That's what leads to this interview where everyone starts panicking. Oh my goodness. So Yasser Qadhi posted this on his channel. Muhammad Hijab posted it on his channel. They soon both ended up taking it down. Because that's how damaging it was. And guys, think about this. What was damaging to the Ummah? What was damaging? Just hearing a glimpse of the truth. Hearing a glimpse of the truth about differences in the Quran was enough to send Muslims into a panic mode and a frenzy. Guys, how could you be trained and indoctrinated to be that that horrified at the truth. Like hearing a word of something that is accurate sends you into a panic mode over your faith. That tells you something about your faith and about the people who've been teaching it to you.
Exactly. I mean, it's to the point where Muslims who aren't familiar with this topic, they're so confident in what their scholars and what their people tell them. They say, "Hey, if you can show me one difference, just show me one difference between."
I heard that for years.
Islam. Yeah, we heard that just yesterday. We heard that from on a stream. We were like, taking calls in and things, and he literally said that. He said, "Yeah, I'll leave if I." And of course, we show him the differences, and he didn't leave. But that's what they say. That's what they say.
Wild stuff. All right, Sheikh Yasser Qadhi. So he says, let me dial it back just a second. He says, "This is not a joke."
Yeah.
And again, what's not a joke, guys? What's not a joke, guys? If the Dawah claim for decades, dot for dot, letter for letter presentation, if that were true, should there be any confusion? Should there be anything at all to be worried about? No, you can have complete confidence. Not what he's saying. He's saying we got a problem here.
The Sahaba. This is not a joke, brothers and sisters. The issue of ahruf and qira'at caused confusion to somebody whom the Prophet ﷺ said, if you want to listen to the Quran directly, listen to Ubay. Ubay is not some even average Sahabi. He is the Qari of the Quran. He is the master. He is who he is. And he goes, فَدَخَلْ فِي نَفْسِي شَكْ. What is all of this stuff?
Muhammad's own companions were having doubts about what he was saying. In other words, they thought there's something fishy going on here. Hey, what are these differences here, Muhammad? Oh yeah, revealed in all those ways. Huh? You sure about that? They didn't know basic logic, but you can kind of I'm sure they had the vibe, even though they didn't know what ad hoc would be. Right. It's in your mind. There's something fishy going on. That's what you'd think.
Again, this is the you were asking some very.
What's that?
And what he's saying there in Arabic, he's saying doubt entered into my heart. He also says takdhib as well. What's takdhib is?
Takdhib?
Yeah.
Like he's falsified.
He's like, falsification and doubt has entered into my heart. So Ubay, like he said, this is the master reader, the master who he is. And he's saying that disbelief and doubt entered into his heart from hearing this different versions. It's crazy.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? So that goes back to Muhammad's companions, and not just any companion. I mean, Muhammad gave his list of. He said, "Hey, if you want to learn the Quran from anyone, learn it from these four guys." Ubay ibn Ka'b's on that list. You had Umar say that Ubay was the best of the Quran reciters. And Ubay's the one having the doubts about whether he can trust Muhammad on this stuff. And it's just amazing that you have Muslims who, no, we can't doubt this. We can't have any doubt. What do you mean? Muhammad's own companions had their doubts. And they're hearing it from Muhammad himself, and they're having trouble buying it. Wild stuff.
Exactly.
Honest question, it's the first time I'm saying these things. Many people are aware who listen to my lectures that I've mentioned the crises that happened to me at Yale. This was the issue. That the issue of ahruf and preservation and qira'at and relationships between them, these are very, very difficult issues. And the most advanced of our scholars, they're not quite fully certain how to solve all of the unanswered questions in there.
Guys, if the standard Dawah lie were true, perfect dot for dot, letter for letter, would you have this situation where he just said the most advanced scholars can't figure out what to do about all this stuff? Does that make any sense? If there were one Quran perfectly preserved, would it make sense for him to say the most advanced of our scholars can't figure out what to do about this and how to explain these things in terms of ahruf and they don't know what to do? No, it makes no sense. Everything he's saying. What is he saying? One, he said every student of knowledge, everyone who just dips their feet into actually learning about the Quran finds out that, hey, we got a problem here. And then he just said it. The most advanced of the scholars can't figure this out. Wild stuff.
Here's the point. These issues should only be discussed amongst people who know what the qira'at are and who understand some of these questions that are being raised.
So is what you're saying the shak that came, or not the shak, but the crisis that you had was in relation to this question of the relationship between the ahruf and the qira'at, basically?
No. The crisis I had wasn't that. The crisis I had was, that was what generated. But what was the crisis? The crisis was very simple. Traditional understandings of ahruf and qira'at cannot answer some of these pressing questions that are now being poked by our people by our academics, by their academics outside of the faith tradition. You see.
So you're saying the Muslim scholarly explanations where we say, oh, this is because of the Qiraat, and this is because of the Ahruf, and this is why we have these differences, and they all go back, and they're being challenged by non-Muslim scholars of the Quran. Does that really make sense? Look, does that really fit in with what this hadith says and so on? And he's having it caused a crisis of faith. Keep in mind, this is a guy who was raised by his dad to believe perfect dot for dot, letter for letter preservation. He goes to Yale, starts learning from academics, and then he's finding out about all these different qiraat and so on. He's finding out about the differences. It's causing confusion. What does he do? He memorizes some responses to regurgitate them, but the non-Muslim scholars keep pressing, and this causes a crisis of faith because he's realizing our explanations don't actually work.
Right. And by the way, they sprinkle Arabic words throughout this interview. And so what Muhammad Hijab was saying, shak is doubt. So he was saying, so was this the doubt? And he wanted to change his words. But they do that. I noticed that they were doing that throughout this interview. They were like sprinkling it with Arabic and, using sort of technical words as well, just to kind of, because they want to kind of, they don't want to confuse people to the most, obviously what ended up happening was the comment section first got deleted. It was disabled. And then the video was this half hour of the discussion was gone. And then eventually the whole interview was taken down. It was like those 3 steps, because they saw, and I remember you did a video on this, you showed the comment section from the original video before they deleted it, and you saw all these Muslims saying, what are you talking about, Sheikh? What do you mean? And they're having all these doubts, all these problems. Like, what? They were so confused.
Yeah. And also another point is that the crisis came from the Islam being put under some scrutiny outside of Islam. That means that the standard of scrutiny is higher outside of Islam, which is very important to point out. Yeah. The level of scrutiny within the Islamic tradition is very low. Whereas if you bring it out to the outside, academic, you see what happens.
Yeah. So what so that point is that you might put it, when an issue arises within the Muslim community, a scholar gives a response that appears to Muslims to solve the problem, and Muslims just say, hey, that's what our scholar says, and they think that solves the problem. And so what you might say is that if these do not actually work, and non-Muslim scholars can come along and say, that doesn't work, because he says it. I don't know if he says it in this clip I've got, but he says, and they're right. They're right because your sources and the objections they're bringing. They're right. So he's saying, wait a minute, it's all there. We've accepted this sheikh's explanation and we regurgitate it, but we know it's wrong. We know it's wrong because we know the sources that show it's wrong, and we know this non-Muslim scholar is right. It's like, what is he saying? He's saying that we're all extremely gullible and we latch on to any explanation that comes along to defend our religion, and that we have to actually go outside our religion to get people to say, that's not true. It's not true even according to your own sources. Yeah. So this is just, this is just amazing from beginning to end. And what's he saying here? This should never be discussed. You should never discuss these things except among students of knowledge. What's that mean? Well, guess what? That kind of explains why we have these clips of him saying dot for dot, letter for letter, perfect preservation to popular audiences, and only discussing the differences among students of knowledge who are going to find out anyway. He's saying, keep this. Do not let your average person know about all these differences and all these problems that we can't answer, and our greatest scholars cannot even answer. Don't let your average Muslim know about this. It's going to cause doubts. It's going to cause doubts. So don't let them know these things. That's what he just said. And then when they have to take it down, it's another example of we can't let people hear this. But it's hilarious that Hijab it's like he's whining the entire time. Please don't make me say this. Please, Muhammad, please don't make me say this. I don't want to say this. But it's like Hijab is saying, look, here's you in public. Here's you in private. I want both of you together in this live stream. And he's like, please don't make me say what I actually believe. Please, you're gonna make me destroy the faith of countless Muslims. Too bad. You guys put yourself in this situation. And your dad put you in this situation, Sheikh Yasser Qadhi.
Yeah, there was a hilarious parody of this that was done. I think it was by an ex-Muslim, and it was it was like kind of like what you were just doing there. Like he was like, "Don't press me, don't press me," and then he's like, "Press." It was a parody. I think he ended up deleting that because Muslims, the religion of peace got to him, and they were like threatening him and stuff. But it was a hilarious parody of this interview, and Yasser Qadhi, this is like, he's telling all of us like this is a topic that we are weak in. So for us, it's like, all right, great, let's capitalize on this. They're literally telling us here, this is our weakness. This is what we can't answer. So for us, we're like, oh, they're helping us out.
Yeah, wow, I love that. I love it when they let the cat out of the bag. Like this has happened. This has happened for. I'll make a video and I'll think it's just some like minor point, or I'll just think I'm being silly. And then I'll find out people like panicking later on over like, wait, what? Wait, what? What bothered you? Oh, that? Okay. Like years ago, I made this video. I was just goofing off one day, and I made a video. Does Allah commit shirk? And I pointed out that in the Hadith, Muhammad says, if you swear by anything other than Allah, you've associated it as a partner with Allah. I was like, oh, okay. Well, in the Quran, Allah swears by literally everything. He swears by literally, swearing by this, swearing by that, swears by this guy, swears by that guy, swears by this. And then he says, I swear by the seen and the unseen. Well, guess what? That's everything. And only two categories of things, seen and unseen. Swears by the seen and the unseen. That's everything. Allah has sworn by everything. Therefore, he has associated everything as a partner with him. He has committed more shirk than anyone else in all of history. I was just goofing off saying, ha, ha, ha. But then years later, Muslims are coming up to me. Look, I can answer that. Look, let me tell you. Wait, that bothered you? Like I had no clue. I had no clue that was going to bother anyone. I was just goofing up. But it's the point is they give us information on what their weaknesses is. And guys, what was just pointed out there. If Sheikh Yasser Qadhi is talking about the crisis of faith, learning these things had on him, and he gets exposed by Fareed. Fareed's like leaking out. We can't trust this guy. Look at what this guy's saying. And what he's saying is true. We've got this issue of of all these differences, and our scholars can't figure these things out. And these guys go into such a panic mode afterwards that they start chopping the thing up, and they cut comments, and then they deleted the things, and then they're trying to cover them up. Guys, they're giving you a roadmap. If you want to absolutely wreak havoc in the Dawah community and in the Ummah, learn some of this information and share it everywhere. And so that's exactly. That's why we're here today. And guys, I'll say this again. The link to Jai and Daughter of Christ channel is in the description box. Be following them, because sounds like they're going to be giving lots of information about this stuff. And guys, it's an interesting situation. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to know everything that Jai and Daughter of Christ. You don't have to know all of it. Learn one or two or three examples. Learn one or two or three examples and share them anywhere. Share them everywhere. Take a screenshot of a difference between two different versions of the Quran. Share that all over the place. Muslims, how do you explain this? It's very easy, very, very easy stuff to do. So, yeah, we gotta do this. And I think, and it's amazing, Jai and Daughter of Christ, going all the way back to when I was starting off. This is after Nabil became a Christian, like a year or two later, when we're figuring out what we're going to do and stuff. He was saying the biggest issue that we should focus on is preservation of the Quran. And I was thinking, that's not interesting to me at all. Like, what are you going to show? that there are textual variants? Of course there are textual variants. It's obvious. He was saying, no, you got to focus on that. And I'm thinking, why? I don't regard it as a problem. I don't regard it as a problem that scribes made mistakes or something. I don't care. It's not. He's like, yeah, but it's going to bother Muslims. I'm like, why is it going to bother Muslims? And I was like, I resisted the entire time, and I would give presentations to show some of the problems. But I was thinking he was wrong about how essential this is in Islam, how Islamic thinking is different from the thinking of everyone else. So I'm thinking I wouldn't think that's a problem. And he was saying, no, this would be a huge problem. And it turns out he was right. This was way bigger than I realized.
100%. Yeah.
Muslim environment, there's always some respect that we have for the Quran. We should. In a Muslim environment, we'll press a little bit, and then we'll say, okay, khalas, sami'na wa ata'na. And that's great, alhamdulillah. When you go to academia, they don't have that red line. And they're going to just, the famous story of the emperor with no clothes. They're going to just point out, no, that doesn't make any sense. Well, that's not true, and this and that. And they'll bring issues, which I'm not going to mention explicitly, that are true because they're in your own books. They're not inventing anything new. They'll bring you riwayat and they'll bring you athar. And
you guys catching that? Saying the non-Muslim scholars bring you things that you know are true. You can't reject them, but they're contradicting your explanations that you've memorized from your scholars. And you know it's the non-Muslims who are correct and your Muslim scholars are wrong. What Muslims of the world, why do you have to get the truth about your own religion from outsiders, and your own best scholars are giving you lies? Tell me how that does not reveal something to you about your religion. How? I cannot figure this out. I cannot figure this out. When you say, hey, if I want truth about my book, I have to go to outsiders because insiders will lie to me. How does this not bother you?
That's
it would
crazy.
bother me.
Yeah.
You add to that very well-known issues of, I don't even want to be explicit. And then you bring on top of that makhtutat. And then
I don't even want to be explicit. Namely, I don't want to mention this.
And it's very clear to you and to every single very advanced student and specialist that the standard narrative has holes in it. That's what I'm going to say. The standard narrative does not answer some very pressing questions. These are now well known within the Western Academy, that they're bringing forth issues. Their level of now knowledge is leaps and bounds above what it used to be, 100 years ago. What is?
And think about what he just said there. These Westerners, Western academics, they used to not know anything about the Quran. What's that mean? It means that we could go around spreading lies. Then they found out about the Quran, and then they started exposing our lies, and now we're all confused and we don't know what to do. This is massively dysfunctional, ladies and gentlemen. All right, only a few seconds left here, and then we'll cut out.
Happening in the last few years, it's not me anymore. It's the Western academics. These problems are now becoming mainstream. And by and large, our ulama in the Eastern world are not aware, by and large, of what's going on in the Western side of things. And they're not answering those questions in a manner that it needs to be answered.
Yeah, guys, I just wanted to, the reason I wanted to play that is because we're going to be going through some information. And when you had the famous holes in the narrative interview, we kind of all went around joking, saying, as if the holes in the narrative were holes in the narrative about perfect preservation. We said, hey, Muslims say perfect preservation, there are holes in the narrative. That's not what Yasser Qadhi was talking about when he talked about holes in the narrative. He was actually talking about a bigger problem, because every scholar, he acknowledged, every student of knowledge knows about they got some issues here, and their greatest scholars cannot answer those issues. But he wasn't talking about there are holes in the narrative of perfect dot for dot preservation. That's not something that any scholar would take seriously. They know that's a lie. What he's talking about holes in the narrative is it's accepted among Muslim scholars that when we try to figure out, hey, what do we do with all these different readings and so on? Oh, we explain that this all somehow goes back to the ahruf and to other things and different, we explain it in that way. And then we get challenged by outsiders who are saying, that doesn't work. That explanation doesn't work. And he's saying the holes in the narrative are our Muslim narrative, that we can actually account for the different versions of the Quran in a way that somehow makes sense, and it all goes back to Muhammad. That's where you've got holes in the narrative. He's saying it doesn't fit. We cannot answer these guys. We have no explanation. And the vast majority of Muslims who are watching this would have no clue what's going on in anywhere here. They wouldn't know what he was talking about. But guys, how would you not realize from that you've been lied to? If you didn't know anything else and you didn't know what he's talking about with Aruf and so on, when he's just acknowledging, wait a minute, once you become a student of knowledge, once you start learning some of this stuff, you find out, whoa, this is a mess. This is freaking stuff. Once you find out that Muhammad's own companions had doubts about his explanations, once they found out there were differences in the Quran, even during the time of Muhammad, once you find out that the greatest Muslim scholars cannot answer the objections of outsiders, and that outsiders are the only ones who are going to speak accurately about what the situation is, how do you not, at the very least, realize you've been lied to? I can't for the life of me figure this out, because it would be the most obvious, glaring thing in the world to me if I were a Muslim and I were watching. If I were a Muslim and I were raised perfect preservation, dot for dot, letter for letter, and I saw any of this, I would want to do some serious investigating, and I would not be going to a Dawah guy. I would not be going to a Dawah guy for an answer. I would be actually doing some serious research and finding out what the case is. And I would never trust the Dawah guys again, period. Anyway, that's just me. Maybe you guys are different.
100% agree.
All right, so you guys ready to jump into your presentation here?
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right, and wait, we got a few super chats. Let's zoom through some super chats real quick, and then we will jump right into your presentation. Knife attacks seem to be making more one-eyed Dajjals. Yeah, you've got Salman Rushdie now has one eye. Bishop Marmari Emmanuel now has one eye because of knife attacks. Not sure how many others are. Where is AP? He's probably moaning and wailing about the meaninglessness of life as an atheist. The only thing that gives him meaning is going live with me, ladies and gentlemen. What is this? Golden shower? Just random golden shower comments from Muhammad Hijab, that great da'i. Golden showers. If anyone doesn't know what we're talking about, Muhammad Hijab sent us piles of messages talking about giving golden showers and stuff like this. And it's really creepy, but that's what you have to deal with when you're talking about Dawah. Thank you for spreading the word of God and for being a good sword and soldier with your tongue for the sake of conversion and education of others. God bless you. The truth will set you free from all the lies, all of them. Muhammad wouldn't know the difference. That's I guess if we're talking about the different reading. Oh, if we're talking about different readings of the Quran, that's a joke. Muhammad, well, it looks the same to me. As everyone knows, I can't read. I have a question. When the Quran says Muslims should read the Torah and Injil Gospels, is that correct? Thank you. I mean, the commands about the Torah, you guys can jump in, but the commands about the Torah and the Gospel, that's talking about different communities. And that's, hey, you Jews, you have your book. Christians, you have your book. And Muslims, we have our book. Is that how you read it?
Yeah.
The verse actually says the Christians and the Jews will find him in the Torah and the Gospel.
Yeah.
So they're telling us to read our books, not to Muslims.
And that we should judge by the Gospel and the Torah. Yeah. For different community, Christian community, Jewish community, Torah and Gospel.
Yeah. So Isaiah 53, the takeaway message of the Quran on that is that Allah sent different prophets into different parts of the world, sent different revelations, and that you should be judging by the revelation that was sent to your community. And so if you're a Muslim, you would say, yeah, those Christians have reliable scripture from Allah and they're supposed to judge by it. But you as a Muslim should be focusing on the Quran. However, you can, as a Muslim, think through this and go, wait a minute, I can go check out what's in that Torah and what's in that gospel to make sure it lines up, which they eventually did. And then they concluded, it must be corrupted. Has to be corrupted because it doesn't line up. It's not what Muhammad said. Muhammad said it was going to be this and it's not. So everything must have changed. Yeah, well, again, there's a more obvious explanation, namely that Muhammad was wrong. I learned so much from Nabi Asli. He does have a lot of fans. By Ezra, do my leather straps deceive me, or is Alan making it appear as if David is talking to disembodied voices? Yes.
We are ghosts.
Speaking with the ghosts of Kirat past. Did you guys catch Rob Christian's new video on why there were around the throne in the Nile River? No, didn't catch it.
Is he talking about the Qurans being thrown into the Nile?
I'm not sure on why there were around. Oh, thrown. Maybe means why they were thrown into the Nile River. Yeah, I don't know. We'll check that out.
We'll look into that.
But we're going to be going into that quite a bit. We're going to have a big thing on the birthday of the Quran because, guys, this year is the 100th anniversary of the Quran that Muslims decades later thought is the only Quran ever, even though the
Cairo edition.
Yeah, it's a century old, ladies and gentlemen, a century old. So we're going to have a big birthday party for the Quran.
Nice. When's that going to be?
There's a date. I think it's in June. They actually have a date when it was official. So we actually have the official birth date of the Quran that Muslims tried to standardize and spread around the world. It became the dominant version. And then they thought, nope, that's the only version.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow. Let's see. Praise the Lord our God. Salam al-Masih and God bless David and Jai and DOC. Original Quran only Christians stand up. Yeshua Akbar. Yeah. By the way, Daughter of Christ, DOC is really cool abbreviation.
I heard that. I'm gonna adopt that name now. I think.
Have you heard that? That was a famous rapper back in the day. It also stands for Department of Correction, so it's a prison system. DOC stands for all kinds of cool stuff. I wish my initials were DOC.
DOC.
You can have it if you like.
No, I mean, it's super cool. I have to stick with Dizzle, but
Dizzle's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, Dizzle is pretty cool.
Hey, Dizzle on command. DOC. Let's stick with it. Yeah, DOC. Yeah, everyone's gonna love DOC. The AI's GPT are such a problem for Islam. Claude, Chat GPT, Gemini know all this scholarship and will share. Yeah, I have seen people posting stuff where they challenge. They ask a question about Islam, and the chat gives way more accurate information sometimes than the Dawah guys do.
Yeah. We did a stream once with Hatun where we showed us debating with one of these AIs. The AI seemed like it was adopting the Dawah script, and then we got it to apologize to us and was like, "Oh, actually, I was wrong about this. I was wrong about that."
Nice.
Pretty hilarious.
Sorry, I was giving the false narrative of the Dawah guys. I apologize for feeding you lies. You know what doesn't have holes? Our soda cans. Pay every penny to say it. Super duper wingling. Oh my goodness, I'm about to block this dude. Love D Wood and the work you're doing. Yeah, that's good. Just take the wingling out of your name. Kai says, when I was in college, 90s, I belonged to a Christian group and we would meet up for encouragement and pray. Muslims also had their group and they would always challenge us to debate Christianity versus Islam. That was part one of, okay, let me go through the rest of these. However, back then, none of us knew anything about Islam or the Quran. We accepted a debate. Before the debate, we prayed on what to say to the Muslims. God answered us and gave us one question Muslims can't answer. And that is, the word of knowledge from God was the Quran paradox. So the Quran paradox is an approved divine argument from God and answer to prayer. What are you talking about? You're talking about the what we call the Islamic dilemma, that the Quran affirms the inspiration, preservation, authority of the Christian scriptures, but contradicts them. You guys know what the Quran paradox is? Is that something that I don't know? Just don't know what that means.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it,
sure.
but I guess you could understand it like maybe the word, as in like Jesus being
Jesus
the
is
word,
the word of
or
God.
something. I know that's helpful to communicate to a lot of Muslims. Like, is the word of God eternal? Yes. Is Jesus the word of God? Yes. And then you kind of like connect the dots there, but I don't know if that's what he's what this person.
Yeah, it's like Islamic dilemma. Like we go around talking about the Islamic dilemma. Whereas if you didn't know what we were talking about and you just saw that as a name, you might not know which dilemma we're talking about and stuff like that. But this brings up an important point about saying, hey, look, the Muslims were challenging us in the 1990s and we didn't know anything. Guys, that's where the problems arose. If you go back 70s, 80s, 90s, and so on, early 2000s, no one in the West knew anything about Islam. This allowed the Dawah guys to go out and say whatever they wanted to their own community, to give their own community ammunition to use against the unbelievers. And also the unbelievers, the non-Muslims, didn't know how to respond to anything. So they could walk into any environment, make up anything they wanted about Islam. No one would know any better. So that's when they were going on, oh, Muhammad's the greatest man who ever lived. His life was perfect in every way. And the Quran is filled with all these scientific miracles. Scientists read these and their minds are blown and they have to acknowledge that the Quran is from God. Perfect preservation right down to the letter. They built their entire religion upon a foundation of lies. And that worked. They helped that helped them spread their religion to a lot of ignorant people. But it also made their problems right now. They got lots of problems right now.
Lots of problems. Yep.
And among those problems is they've been talking about perfect preservation of the Quran, and now we all found out that it's not true. And so we get to expose them. Pinched D. Wood, one of the funniest videos on the internet. There's a video about pinching me. Hey, D. Wood, how do you reconcile pericope adulteri? I mean, I would when people are pointing out that it's not in some manuscripts, it's not saying that the story is false. It's just that it's not in early manuscripts of the Gospel of John. So I would suspect that it was a story that wasn't originally in the Gospel of John, but it was a popular story, and someone said, "Hey, this needs to be in there."
You also see it appearing in a bunch of early translations as well. But we have a slide on this for when Muslims might bring that up. We have kind of a parallel situation in Islam with like how we should respond to that.
Okay, is that going to be in your presentation now?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Then we'll let that go for now. Odin gave one eye for knowledge. Power to donkeys. Let's see. Thanks, D. Wood, for having these two fine folks on your show. Jai and DOC, thanks for speaking the truth. Please stay safe. Many are praying for you both.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, this is cool stuff. Blessings, Brother David. Where is Prostate Prophet? Again, probably crying himself silly. Why am I here? There's no point to life without talking with Christians. David, why is Allah?
I think you have one of the funniest live chats. I mean, this definitely takes the
yeah. Now we have the graping thing. We keep talking about we need like a glossary to explain everything to everyone because we're ending up with our own like language here.
Yeah.
David, why is Allah so scared of you? I don't know, because I'm too powerful and I'm real. Yes, that argument. Okay, he's talking about the Islamic dilemma. The Quran tells you to read the Bible, but you say the Bible isn't reliable, so is Allah wrong? And guys, it's actually a family, because you just have one. The Quran is affirming all these other scriptures, but these scriptures contradict Islam, and they're not what the situation supposedly is. But then, in addition to that, you have the Quran is appealing to the Bible for confirmation of Muhammad, prophecies about Muhammad, and you don't find them, and so on. And even if you do find them, wait a minute, it's a corrupt book, I thought. And so what are you guys doing? It's a giant mess. But yeah, this is good. So Kai here is pointing out, even in the 90s, when they didn't know a lot about Muhammad, they didn't know a lot about the Quran, just learning what the Quran said about the Bible was able to help them against the Muslims. So it's another example of something you should want to look into. And finally here, recently visited Saudi, no boycotts in support of Palestine. People always drinking Starbucks, super relaxed. It was hard to believe I was in Saudi. Yeah. Yeah, that's it's much more of a Western thing, ladies and gentlemen. Right.
There's a big Dawah fight about that. Like Shamsi's taking one side and saying that, Muslims shouldn't be doing this, or at least you shouldn't, enforce people to do this. To the point where I don't know if you saw the clip where he ended up getting beat up by some Muslims.
Yeah.
See that. He got jumped by some Muslims because of the things that he said. He was saying like, why you guys want Saudi Arabia to boycott these places when, he's saying like they're giving their profits to Palestine, they're doing more, whatever, that's what he was trying to argue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a big, civil war in the Dawah world over if you should boycott McDonald's and Starbucks and stuff.
Yeah, guys. So, as far as the people flipping out here and the Dawah guys flipping out and ban this and boycott that and so on, they're basically in panic mode right now.
Yeah.
You guys can tie all this together. It's all connected. They're in panic mode over what they call the avalanche of apostasy. All their Dawah lies of the past are being exposed. I don't even know what their arguments are anymore. Ali Dawah says that people are going to convert because of our intolerance. Like, what is your argument? We're so intolerant. We're so intolerant. Yeah. Is that your new argument? We're so intolerant and join us. But they don't actually have any more positive confirmation that they don't have any arguments that they can give that aren't going to instantly be exposed as lies. So they're coming up with other things and they're trying everything right now, but they're realizing whatever your position, people have different positions on Israel and Palestine, whatever your position is from the perspective of a Dawah guy, how Islam is strong and is going to take over the world. How do you reconcile that with the fact that you can't deal with this one little tiny country? It's like the size of a postage stamp on a map, and you've been attacking it for decades and saying that Allah wants you to destroy it. And it doesn't even make sense given the Quran, because Allah gave Israel the two punishments. I don't know what those two punishments were, because there were three that would actually fit. And you could go to the various commentaries and we'll say there's two punishments. For those two fitnas it was the Assyrians and the Babylonians, or it was the Babylonians and the Romans, because the Assyrians conquered them, then deported a bunch of the population. The Babylonians did the same thing. The Romans did the same thing. And then you had Sheikh Yasser Qadhi saying he thinks that all three of those were the original, and that the other one refers to the future when Muslims are going to drive. Because guys, keep in mind, Israel's not supposed to be there right now. It's a big problem. It's a thorn in their side. It's not supposed to be there. And so that's why they have to destroy it. The longer it's there, it's just like destroying their confidence at a time when their confidence is already being destroyed by the mass apostasy, and all their arguments come crumbling to the ground. So they're in a kind of panic mode and freaking out, and all they can come up with is boycott Starbucks. Okay, well, great. We'll see how that. We'll see if that rescues your religion. All right, let's go ahead and jump into I'm going to pull up your presentation now, guys. I'm going to take myself off the screen, and Jai and Daughter of Christ are going to give it. Learn. Well, if you have the time, learn all of this. Watch this presentation multiple times. I understand not everyone has time to learn everything. That's why I make videos like 3 Quran verses every Christian should know. I understand not every Christian has time to learn a bunch of the Quran or to even learn like 10 verses or something like that. Okay, great. That's why I make a list. Here's 3. People can learn 3. So I would say learn as much of this as you can and as fits with your schedule. Muslims are not going to get the truth from their Dawah guys. They're not going to get the truth from their scholars. If they get the truth from anyone, they have to get the truth from us. And we can only do that if we learn the truth. So here we go.
All right. Okay. So, so just getting started, I wanted to show this graph here from Shadi Nasser where he shows like these different periods, these 5 canonization processes that have happened. So he has, the first one, Uthman. He doesn't, really count the Abu Bakr one. A lot of Western academics don't take that too seriously. So they go with Uthman. And then the second one, Ibn Mujahid, which is really what we're going to be focusing on in terms of who he was, his influence, and what he did, and the way that he viewed these variant readings of the Quran, because it totally differs from how Muslims view it today. So not even the variants themselves are problematic, but how the early Muslim scholars viewed these variants is problematic. And so he canonized 7 readings, which became known as the 7 canonical readings. He enforced them, and we're going to show an example for how he enforced these readings. He had political power, and this is in the 10th century, by the way. And he had, so we're talking like 300 years after Muhammad, and roughly. And he had this political pull where he sort of enforced his 7 readings. And then you go,
One second, Jai, because this will be new for lots of people. So,
sure. Yes,
so Muhammad dies 632, and then you have the first canonization. So this is Uthman, where he's burning all the Quran. So he finds out that there are all these differences, and that's actually going to lead to division and possibly civil war over the different Qurans. And so we've got to do something here. And so he canonizes, he has everyone hand over the Qurans, burns them all, and issues his authoritative Quran. But that's still within the lifetimes of many of Muhammad's companions. Then I'm looking at this date, the second canonization. So you're talking about, this is where they have these different readings of the Quran. And Ibn Mujahid says, basically, I'm picking 7. So he has some criteria for deciding which ones are.
You'd think he'd have some criteria, but it's like another mystery to Muslim scholars why he picked the 7 that he picked, and why he only chose 7. So but we'll get into that.
And what I find interesting in all this, and I would love to have Muslims explain this, because I do not know how they would explain this. Maybe you do. Maybe you do. Okay. But you have all of these things that are happening in the Quran. You have all these things that are happening in the Quran long after the time of Muhammad, and they affect how people read and understand the Quran from then on. And you wonder what sort of authority these people have. In other words, once Uthman decides this is the Quran, doesn't matter what Ubay ibn Ka'b said, doesn't matter what Ibn Masud said, doesn't matter. This is the official Quran. We're going to burn all the differences. Whatever people think about that, whether they think that this is, this refers to him getting rid of 6 of the 7 ahruf or whatever. It's like, what authority did Uthman have to do that to the Quran, to make those kinds of decisions for the Quran? Why did he have that authority? But in addition to that, you can at least say, well, this is a companion of Muhammad, and it's within the lifetimes of many of the companions. When you're talking about Ibn Mujahid, now you're talking about 3 centuries later. 3 centuries later, this guy's picking and choosing. We're going with this Quran and that Quran and this Quran and that Quran and this Quran and that Quran and this Quran. These are the Qurans. And you think, okay, well, he's like changing the course of history. From then on, people say, okay, these are the ones. These are the ones we have to go with. It's like, wait, Muslims, was this guy divinely inspired too? Is this guy a prophet? What divine authority does this guy have to say what the correct readings are and what the authoritative readings are? These are the things that bother me. Like Muslims today, they don't realize what they view as the Quran was influenced by a ton of decisions that took place along the way by just Muslim leaders and Muslim scholars, and a Muslim scholar or Muslim leader decides this or that. And then the Muslim community has to adapt to it. And then Muslims today get to today and they think, you see, we have this perfect Quran perfectly. And it's like, wait a minute, what you have is based on the decisions of all these people who came along way after your prophet. Why do you believe that they had some sort of divine authority to make these kinds of decisions? That's the question. Because if not, then it's just some guy. It's just some guy deciding what you as a Muslim are allowed to read. And that decision, that guy does not go back to Muhammad. He doesn't have some sort of prophetic authority, and yet you treat it as if he has prophetic authority. Anyway, so that's wild stuff.
Yeah. Exactly, and I would love to hear Muslims answer those questions as well. So, but what you do notice that these people all have in common is that they all, like in the case of Uthman, like he's the Khalifa, he's the leader, and then Ibn Mujahid, he had same sort of political power. He had these ties with the government, and so in some way they were all government instituted canonizations. So yeah, it's a really good question. Like, so where's the divine aspect? It seems like they just had a lot of political power, and if someone else had the political power, well, they might have made a different canonization or done things differently. So after Ibn Mujahid, in the 10th century, you go a couple centuries later. Now we're in like the 12th century, and what these two people did, Adani and Ash-Shatibi, what they did is they took the readings that Ibn Mujahid canonized, the 7 readings. And so, for example, like how it's like Hafs getting his reading from Awesome. So, well, originally, Ibn Mujahid didn't put a cap on how many students per reader there were. So you could have like let's say Awesome, he had like Hafs as a student, he had Shawab as a student. Let's say he had like 10 or 15 other students. There wasn't like a limitation there. So what these guys did was they limited it to just one reader has 2 transmitters each. So now Awesome can only have he only has Hafs and Shawab. He only has those 2 transmitters. So that's what they did. So they kind of limited. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I didn't know that. So when we look at when you look now, and anyone can look up the 10 Qira'at, and when you look up a list, you'll see that if you have like a chart, it'll list the 10 Qira'at, and then it will list 2 names after it. You're saying that this was another decision. This was another decision that we're going to have, that each one of these is limited to 2. What do you
call them transmitters?
2 transmitters. Okay.
Yeah, you can say, or like readers or students or whatever. But yeah, so they're the ones who limited it to, so for example, like the reading of Awesome doesn't exist in and of itself. You can only access Awesome through his students. So like Hafs is one of his students, Shalba is another one of his students. So to get this reading of Awesome, you have to go through one of his students. And so like I said, they had like multiple students, like maybe like 10, 15, 20 or whatever. And they were all saying Awesome said it like this, Awesome said it like this. So even one reader had different variations. And so what these guys did was they were like, all right, we're going to have to limit each reader to 2 each.
The students, by the way, didn't agree.
Yeah.
The students of one reader would disagree.
Exactly.
So that's why they had to limit to 2.
Yeah.
So
that's probably.
So you're saying you have these 10 different Qira'at, and then they had students, and those students wouldn't agree on the correct reading from their guy, from the guy that they're going with. And then another decision along the way. And so now we're in now we're even further away. They're making more decisions. So 11th to 12th century, they're making more decisions and deciding, hey, we're limiting each of these readings to 2 transmitters because their students are all in a state of confusion. And so we have to pick 2 official transmitters from them. Wow. So more interesting decisions being made by people who aren't prophets.
Exactly. And so these are all like kind of like they go into the governments in some way and somehow, and they kind of enforce it onto the people. So initially you have like the 7 readings, And by the way, Ibn Mujahid was heavily criticized for only picking 7. Imam al-Razi, for example, he goes after him and says, look, why did you choose only 7? Because you chose 7, you made the Muslims think that the ahruf, 7 ahruf is the 7 qira'at. So he's like, you're the one who caused this problem. So he was like saying, and he was trying to compel other Muslim scholars, add more than 7, because people are going to be so confused that 7 qira'at, 7 ahruf, you can see there's a, you might get confused about those two. So eventually, leading up to the 15th century now, you have Ibn Jazari who adds in 3 additional readers and then 2 students each. So now 15th century, that's when you have these 10 readers with their 2 students each. So altogether you have 20 different students or 20 different readings.
And that's the list. So the list that you see today, if you look up different qira'ats, it's going to be a list of 10, and then each of the 10 is going to have 2 names after it. That comes because people flip out saying, "Hey, I wonder if that was an intention, if that was intentional on the part of Ibn Mujahid. If I say 7 qira'at, maybe people will think these are the 7 things, these are the 7 ahruf or something like that."
Yeah, like people are really, they're still trying to figure out why he chose 7. Why did he only limit it to 7? He could have chosen so much more. Like you see here, eventually in history they did add 3 more. And then of course you have like the final canonization, which he puts it at 1923, so that would kind of mess up your birthday party. But you do have some people do say actually 1924 as well. So you'd have different dates on that.
Well,
but,
I read. I think it took it took them years. I think it took them like 7 or 13 years or something like that. So it took them years. So I don't know if they're talking about when it was like first decided or when it first was put out. But we'll figure all that out by the birthday party.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get into it. So now, like I said, we want to focus on Ibn Mujahid a little bit, and so we have a scholar here, Mekki al-Qaisi, who's writing around the same time as Ibn Mujahid, the 10th century. By the way, a little bit about Ibn Mujahid. He was a student. I mean, there are some reports that say he was a student of al-Tabari. So he had he was kind of taught by him in certain areas. And so just kind of a side note on that. So Mekki al-Qaisi says here that different Muslim scholars have noted in their books that there are more than 70 readers, like more than 70 qira'ah, who are of higher rank and more virtuous status than these 7. So the 7 that Ibn Mujahid chose, there are people saying, "Wait, we have more than 70." And these are better status and higher rank. And so this kind of gets into a little bit of their view of the different readings, because today Muslims would say, oh yeah, all these readings are divine, they're all equally inspired by God. But back then they were saying things like, well, actually we have some that are of higher rank or more virtuous. So yeah.
So hang on. So he's picking the ones, and the Qurans that Muslims believe in today are descended from those ones that are selected by Ibn Mujahid, but people are pointing out, wait, we've got better ones than these ones that you're picking. That's right.
Exactly.
Why find that interesting is because you had that same exact situation in early Islam when Uthman is saying, hey, everyone has to follow this version of Zayd ibn Thabit, and people like Ibn Masud are saying, what?
Yeah,
he was in the loins of an unbeliever when I was memorizing the Quran. How does he get to decide what the correct Quran is? And he actually told his followers, don't hand your Qurans over to this guy, hide them. And so, but it's the same situation where Muhammad gives his followers a list. Here are the people you learn the Quran from. Then Uthman goes with someone else and says, no, we're going with this guy. And the original guys are like, wait, what? You going with him? Seriously? Yeah. And so it's the same situation years later. Hey, we're going with these. Wait a minute, you're going with those. We got better people to go with. Nah, we're going with these guys. It's wild stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So by the way, and when it comes to that committee that Uthman got together, 3 of the people in the committee were his son-in-laws, and then you have Zayd, and like you mentioned, Ibn Masud actually said, well, Zayd was just like a little kid. And by the way, in the Arabic, it says he was in the backbone of his father, because they believe that the sperm was in the backbone. Mm-hmm, so he's like, he was in the backbone of a kafir, and I was learning the Quran from Muhammad. Why do you want me to take his Quran? And so you had like these his 3 son-in-laws, and then you have Zayd, who were just children during Muhammad's prophethood or prophetic, career or whatever. And you had all these senior companions as well, like, you had Ali, you had Ubay, you had Ibn Masud, and they were just like, they were rejected. And so Ibn Masud was the only one who kind of gave that vocal objection of like, okay, I'm not going to submit to this. And by the way, everyone in Iraq, everyone here, don't conceal your Qurans, don't give it to them, where this almost caused a civil war for the early Muslims. And then you could say like Ubay and Ali, they did object to it as well, like implicitly, because they continued to read their like mushafs of the Quran. They continued to read theirs, so they didn't like outright vocally object like Ibn Masud, but they did continue to read their versions. So there is some sort of implicit objection there.
And by the way, I mean, think about it. It's just learning that that's exactly what you read straight out of the hadiths. That's exactly what you read straight out of the hadiths. Even knowing that should have given Muslims a clue that there's a problem going on here, that there's a problem. Because when Zayd ibn Thabit it was originally told by Abu Bakr, hey, compile the Quran. And when he says it would have been easier if he had told me to move a mountain. If the standard narrative about what happened back then were true, that you had all these companions, you had so many hundreds of companions, they all had the Quran perfectly memorized and so on. If you told someone write the Quran, it's okay, you've got a lot of writing to do, but other than that, not too hard. I'm gonna have to write something down. It's shorter than the New Testament. It's not too bad, but you could pick any two of these companions, sit down, and they're gonna recite it, and you're gonna write it down. That should have, that's some work, but that's not like moving a mountain work. He considered it a total nightmare to try and compile the Quran. And then you have the burning of the Qurans, and then you have disputes among Muhammad's closest companions. And then, like, how does Uthman have the authority to decide who's going to be the guy who compiles the official Quran? What authority does he have to overrule Muhammad, who says, hey, learn it from Ubay ibn Ka'b and from Ibn Masud and so on? There are all these problems, and it's right there at the beginning. And so what you're pointing out in this presentation, these problems never seem to go. It just seems like there's a problem after a problem after a problem, and another guy who makes a decision after another guy who makes a decision after another guy who makes a decision after another guy. And then we get down to our time, and Muslims think that this is all, there's no confusion at all, and it all makes perfect sense going back to the time of Muhammad. It's this is crazy. This is insane.
Yeah, it's really crazy, and so we're going to get into specific examples after this, but I just wanted just a little bit more on Ibn Mujahid. Sort of like this is a snippet from Shah Nasser's book, one of his book, The Canonization of the Quran, or the Second Canonization of the Quran, page 141. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but just to kind of highlight some points. There was a kind of like, this is like kind of a microcosm of what was happening to Muslims who are disagreeing with Ibn Mujahid. So there are two famous cases, but we're just going to use one just to kind of showcase what was going on. So this guy called Ibn Shanabuth, he didn't accept the seven ruling, like the seven Qurans, like the seven readings that Ibn Mujahid said, because he said that he had access to the Qurans of Ibn Masud and of Ubay. So he's like, I have access to their Qurans, I'm going to keep reading their Qurans. Eventually what ended up happening was Ibn Mujahid brought him to a judge. He was flogged. He was forced to repent. And then they made him swear that he would, repent and adhere to these seven readings. So this is kind of like the political power that these guys had, and how they would enforce these readings. So here's our seven readings. You disagree? You're going to keep reading your other readings? Okay, well, we're going to send you to prison, or we're going to whip you, or we're going to, do all these other things.
Wait. So he didn't just say, we'll sit down and we'll show you the evidence that you got some problems here. He didn't do that. It's hey, you have your arguments, and what are we going to do? So guys, just notice the pattern here, guys. The pattern here is always like cover up the reality, however it's done. So Muhammad gets called out for, wait a minute, why are people reciting the Quran differently? They all heard it from you, and it's different. Oh, that's the different ahruf. Allah revealed it in all these ways. Then you get differences later on. Oh, we'll just burn all these different Qurans. Then you get down to this time. Hey, wait a minute, I've got more reliable stuff. Well, we'll flog you.
Yeah.
And then you get down to our time. We'll shout you down and humiliate you. And oh my goodness.
Exactly, man.
This what happened. Yeah. This what happens when you build your religion on a foundation of lies.
Yeah, exactly. And so these are the seven here. And I just want to quickly note that you see that there's three of them from Kufa, 1 from Basra. So there's 4 altogether from Iraq. And, like I said, Muslim scholars have no idea why he chose 3 from Kufa, especially the reading of Hamza. By the way, all of these readers have problems. Like if you go to the biographical literature of like the hadith, and they the ones that they go to say, this person's reliable, they have a good memory, this and that. Most of these guys have problems. Like, Hafs is known to be a liar, for example. He's known to be a thief. Asim is known to have a bad memory. But somehow they made it in, like, to the narration for the Quran. They wouldn't make it in for narrations for hadith, but they made it in for the Quran, something even higher.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I want people to understand this. So, since some of these guys have various reasons they're accused of having bad memories, that would put a flag beside your name if you were transmitting hadith, or if you're a liar, that would put a flag by your name if you're a transmitter of hadith. You're pointing out that these guys, if they were transmitting hadiths, they would be considered unreliable transmitters of hadiths, but they are considered authoritative, reliable transmitters of the Quran. That's what you're saying?
Exactly. And they're even, they're even like Shia scholars who point this out as well. Like they go to these biographical literatures where the Muslims will point out, like, they call it like the science of men, and they say, oh yeah, these guys are reliable for this reason, and they're unreliable for this reason. And these Muslims, these Shia scholars will go through, okay, let's go through, for example, Hafs, and we're going to see all your books are saying this guy's unreliable. They're saying he's a liar. They're saying he's a thief. So you wouldn't accept him for any hadith, but you accept him for the Quran. And they just point out all these problems for almost all of these guys. Like Hamza is a really interesting case because many Muslim scholars consider this reading like to be like grammatically incorrect. It was like a horrible reading. They don't want to pray behind this guy, but somehow he made it in there because Ibn Mujahid canonized him to be in this list. But earlier, Muslims were like, no, we don't accept this guy. We don't like him, and he's actually a terrible reading. But now Muslims today are forced to say, oh, this is actually all inspired, all from God.
This is amazing stuff.
So when we go to how did Ibn Mujahid view these variant Qurans, he begins his book, the book here.
His book is called Kitab al-Sab'a fi al-Qira'at, which means the book of the 7 readings. So he actually wrote a book about the 7 readings, and he said that he started out by saying people differed.
Yeah.
Just like anything in Islam. He said people differed in qira'at of the Quran, just the same way they differed in legal rulings and in narrations of the companions and their immediate followers.
And he goes on to say, like, this is a mercy for the Muslims and all this stuff. But we just want to point this out to say the way he viewed variant readings is like how you would view different legal rulings. So you can probably think of a ton of different, like, maybe like the Maliki, or even like the apostates. Some of them say, okay, you have 3 days to repent. Some of them say, no, you have to get killed immediately. They wouldn't say necessarily that each of those rulings are divinely inspired, but that's just kind of their interpretation and their school of thought. That's how they would apply the law. So he's saying, like, just like you differ in laws and like your interpretation of what the Sharia is, well, that's also how these guys differ in their readings. And also how you guys have different hadith and different transmitters. You have differences there. Well, that's also how these guys differed in their reading of the Quran. So he wasn't saying things like, oh yeah, these are all inspired by God and these all came down and they're all divinely revealed. He's saying, no, they're kind of just like differences like you'd have in legal differences.
And this is, the thing that keeps jumping out to me is how eerily similar this is to things that happened in the 1st century of Islam. People differed in the reading. That's exactly what was said in the hadith from Bukhari, where it's brought to Uthman that people are reciting the Quran differently, and he needs to do something about it. And it's like, wait,
yeah.
you guys keep doing the same thing. Oh, people have all these differences. We can't actually make a case for this particular thing being the most accurate and reliable and to the exclusion of all others. So let's just pick something and enforce it and pretend that we're united on this.
Exactly. So we're going to show a little bit about how he viewed the variant readings in some more detail, like in his book about the 7 readings. We're going to talk about how he actually said that some of these readings were wrong, which would be like, imagine a Muslim scholar today saying, oh yeah, Hafs was actually wrong. Well, Ibn Mujahid, the guy who canonized emphasized this so much. He canonized the 7 readings. He thought that some of these readings were wrong. And I think Shadi Nasser notes where he says like about 60 different places where the canonized readings are wrong in different ways. So we have this here. So this isn't going to be like, oh, this is a contradiction in the meaning, but we're just going to show how did he view some of these differences, and what did he, you know, how did he take these
So
debates?
he's the one who canonized this, and he's the one who said it was wrong.
Yeah.
That's
So
in
the-
Surah 3. Yep.
So the guy who decides, hey, I get to pick which Qurans are reliable and authoritative, and he's pointing out, hey, among these Qurans that I am selecting out of all the endless pile of Qurans we can choose from, I'm picking these 7 as the best and most reliable and authoritative. You're saying even he, with the Qurans he's choosing, is saying, yeah, but some of these Qurans have some problems with them. And that once you get down to today, Muslims can't say that because they have to say it all goes back to Muhammad.
Exactly.
Correct.
So
This is
you wouldn't
insane.
ever hear a Muslim today say, oh yeah, Hafs has an error, or Qalun, or Warsh, or whatever. You wouldn't ever hear him say that they have errors. But the guy who canonized them had no problem. For example, like we're going to read this example in chapter 3, verse 97, where he says clearly that Hafs was an error.
So this is the Hafs Quran that most Muslims have. This verse is about to perform the Hajj. To perform the Hajj is an obligation. So I've circled the Hajj. That's what Hafs gets it wrong. He pronounces it as Hajj
with an E, like an
with
E
an
vowel,
E vowel or a
I
I vowel, like Hajj.
Yeah.
So that actually makes it a noun. It makes it a noun and not a verb, where it should have been a verb.
Yeah.
So the correct word is actually Hajj with an A sound, but Hafs actually says it with an E sound.
So we have
one second. So the Hafs Quran. That's basically if people grab a copy of if people go to a bookstore and grab a copy of the Quran in Arabic, chances are they're getting Hafs, right?
Yeah.
So if they were grabbing like a Yusuf Ali just Quran off the shelf or something like that, they're getting the Hafs Quran. And so this is one of the, even though Hafs was considered a liar for various reasons and would have been considered an unreliable transmitter of hadith, since Ibn Mujahid said, actually, we're sticking with these 7, and he puts Hafs on the list, that makes Hafs one of the authoritative readings. But you're pointing out, even according to Ibn Mujahid, the Hafs Quran has problems. So you're saying this is a problem according to Ibn Mujahid himself. Ibn Mujahid is saying, hey, Hafs has some problems. Here's a problem where something is wrong. But even though Hafs is considered a liar, and even though Ibn Mujahid, who chooses Hafs and says this is one of the ones we're going with, and then you get down to our time in the 20th century, they say, actually, this is the main version. Matter of fact, it's the only version. That's the one we're gonna spread around the world. A Muslim today would not be able to say this is a mistake because of the way he's been indoctrinated by the Dawah clowns. He wouldn't be able to say that Hafs the liar got something wrong, even according to the guy who chose Hafs and selected Hafs as an authoritative reading. Even he said there are problems, but your average Muslim today could not say that this is a problem.
Exactly.
Correct. So actually, and it's a very a basic mistake as well. Like a mistake between a noun and a verb.
Right.
It's a very basic mistake. Like the sentence is meant to be, the duty of all men is to come to the house. To come, a verb. He says it as a noun.
Yeah.
And even his fellow student, Shu'ba, who also learned from Asim, he gets it right.
Right. So again, Asim, now that, has been canonized to have just 2 transmitters each, 2 students each, he has Hafs and Shu'ba. They differ here.
Yeah, they're different.
Hafs is saying Hajj and Shu'ba is saying Hajj.
Yeah.
So this is so they're both claiming to get it from Asim. Yeah. But yet they're reading it differently, and so we have exactly what Ibn Mujahid said here, and essentially what Daughter of Christ was saying, exactly what he says here, is that this So by the way, when it refers, his name is Abu Bakr, and so sometimes in his books it just says Abu Bakr said. That's meaning like that's what Ibn Mujahid said.
Yeah, that's his first name.
Yeah. So he said this is a mistake, and then as we said, Hajj is the verb, Hajj is the noun. So he's saying, look, this is a mistake. Hafs got it wrong.
Yeah, the source is Kitab al-Sab'a fil Qira'at, his own book.
Yeah.
He says that he's wrong here.
Yeah. So if you want to take screenshots or whatever, this is all translation of what he's saying here in the Arabic. Okay.
Okay.
So all right. So now after we were talking earlier about Hatun and how she brought 26 Qurans to Speaker's Corner. Well, one of the things that came out of that was Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawah. They ran to a sheikh and they're like, 26 versions of the Quran. How do we address that? How do we answer that? And so now they got him to basically get to the point where they say, hey, you know what? There are differences, but there's no contradictions. So let's hear them say that.
Would you ever find a contradiction in these? I personally challenge anyone to try to bring one qira'ah where meaning contradicts another meaning.
Okay, so he challenges everyone to bring a contradiction between the two readings. One qira'ah, one reading contradicts another reading. So we're going to provide multiple examples of contradictions, and we're going to start with this one here, chapter 10, verse 16.
Yep, so that verse says, if Allah had willed, I would not have recited it to you, nor would he have made it known to you. So the part that is different in other readings is the part highlighted.
Yep. Nor would he have made it known to you. So in other words, Allah would not have made it known to you. And so we have the different Qurans on the screen here and the translations below. So one is saying he would not have made it known to you, and the other one saying he would, because one of the letters, the alif is deleted. There's a deletion sign on it, meaning it doesn't exist in this recitation of Ibn Kathir. Ibn Kathir, the reader, by the way, not the commentator. And in this reading, it says, it turns it on its head. So one of them says he would not have made it known to you. The other one says he would have made it known to you.
Yeah, and the difference is just an elongation of the A vowel. So in Hafs it says وَلَا أَدْرَاكُمْ بِهِ.
The la, like the elongation.
Yeah,
there.
It makes the la elongated, meaning not. Whereas the Qumbul version says وَلَا أَدْرَاكُمْ.
Yeah, without the long A there.
Without the elongation, which actually means the opposite meaning.
So the takeaway here is the most straightforward way to have a claim contradict itself is to just add a negation, to add a not.
Yep.
Correct.
So Muslims of the world, Surah 10, verse 16. You go to one version of the Quran and it's, he would have made it known to you. You go to a different version of the Quran, it's, he would not have made it known to you. Is that the same thing? He would have made it known to you. He would not have made it known to you. He would have made it known to you. He would not.
To show one contradiction.
Yeah, guys, are these the same thing? I will give you a cookie. I will not give you a cookie. I will give you a cookie. I will not give you a cookie. Those are opposites, right? Those are opposites. That would be a contradiction, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
What was the challenge? What was the challenge? So again,
you want to play it again?
Yeah, historical background for everyone. Yeah, let me just give the historical background. We'll watch that again. Historical background for years. Dawah clowns, like the two bookends here. These two bookends spent years, perfect preservation, right down to the letter. Only one Quran, not one letter's difference between any two Qurans. Where do they have to find out that is a lie? From Hatun. An ex-Muslim Christian woman who shows up to Speaker's Corner with 26, there are more. She showed up originally with 26 different Arabic Qurans, not 26 different translations, 26 Qurans, that each one was different from all the others in the Arabic. Then Muslims went into panic mode, and where do they go? Do they go to anyone who's going to give them reliable, accurate information? No. They go to the same scholars who know, according to Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, they know this doesn't work. They know there are problems, but they can't stop going to the same exact guys who've been lying to them all along. And their guy says, yes, okay, we got some differences, but no contradictions. No contradictions, so it's not a real problem, right?
Exactly. But David, I challenge you. I challenge you. Here we go. Let's hear it again.
Would you ever find a contradiction in these? I personally challenge anyone to try to bring one qira'ah where meaning contradicts another meaning.
Where the meaning contradicts another meaning. And so what you have pointed out here is even among these variant readings of the Quran, here you have 10:16, he would not have made it known to you, or he would have made it known to you. He said there are no contradictions. So can we say challenge accepted and challenge met?
Exactly.
Yes, but we've got more contradictions.
And we've got more.
Uh-oh.
So we came like with a couple of different commentaries as well, but we can just go to the next example here. So this is another example.
Wait, you go back. Was that Tafsir Jalalain? I know he points out.
Yes, it was.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, just go ahead and read. Just go ahead and read that for us real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Say, if God had willed, I would not have recited it to you, nor would he have made it known to you, nor would he have made you aware of it. The la wala adrakum is for negation and is a supplement to what preceded.
A variant reading
has the lam, the la adrakum, he would have made it known to you.
So here we have the two Jalals. So you're talking centuries after the time of Muhammad. They're aware of it, and they talk about it. And even in their commentaries, they would include these textual variants. Somehow, Muslims who, if they were to read Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, if they were to read any of their sources, or if they were to read their commentaries of people like the two Jalals and so on, they would find all of this, and yet they just believed their Dawah guys who said not one letter's difference anywhere between two Qurans. This is, my goodness.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have another one here about chapter 11, verse 81. And this is about the command that was given to Lot concerning his wife.
Yep.
So here's what the verse says.
So the verse here says, the angel said, O Lot, indeed we are messengers of your Lord. They will never reach you. So set out with your family during a portion of the night, and let not any among you look back except your wife. Indeed, she will be struck by that which strikes them.
Yep. So the key part here is accept your wife, and depending on how that's vocalized in the Arabic, and we're literally talking about a vowel difference, just a vowel, an A vowel and an O vowel difference, and it completely changes the meaning. So let's show what's going on here in the Arabic. So the majority of readers understand it to mean that Lot is commanded not to bring his wife. So when it says imra'ataka, the A vowel there brings it back to the part of the sentence referring to the first command, set out with your family except your wife.
Yeah, you find that in the Hafs, the imra'ataka, it's a diacritical mark.
Little dash on the top of the letter. And then the other readings, according to Ibn Kathir and Abu Amr, it says imra'atuka, not taka, tuka. And so that connects it to another part of the sentence. There's technical grammatical stuff going on here, but just for the sake of it, we'll just read what it's saying here. And it says, and not let any among you turn back or look back except your wife. So the except your wife is going back to another part in the sentence. And I don't know why I have Yasser.
Can you go back to that? Because this one I've actually heard about before and I've talked about. I think the letter's difference there changes the case of that little accept your wife, and so the different
case and the accusative case.
So it changes. So there's a difference in whether it's the letter changes it from whether it's a nominative to an accusative, and the nominative or the accusative change what it's modifying. So so it's basically having the different cases. If it's one case, then accept your wife refers to setting out with your family. It's setting out with your family except your wife, meaning your wife is left at home. Your wife is left at home. But if you change a letter, it changes the case to where don't look back after you. So in other words, after you leave, don't look back except your wife. Your wife is going to leave, but she's going to look back, unlike the rest of you. And so the contradictory meaning would be, well, one of these things had to happen. Either she went out with them or she didn't. One of those things. So if you read it one way, if you read it in one version, Lot's wife stayed back. Everyone left except her. She stayed back in the city. And if you read it according to another version of the Quran, no, she went out with them, but she looked back. And so you have, if you read it one way, if you read it in one version, Lot's wife stayed in the city. She did not leave. If you asked, if you finished reading it, where was she? She was in the city. She died. She perished with the city. If you look at another version, no, she left the city. She perished because after leaving the city, she looked back. And these would be contradictory meanings. These would be contradictory meanings among reliable and authoritative hadith that don't contradict each other. I mean, Quran passages, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we have a scholar who actually admits to this contradiction as well. His name is Sheikh Qadhi, and we're going to let Yasser Qadhi introduce him because, you know, everyone loves Yasser Qadhi.
So we all love him.
The teacher of our teachers, Sheikh Qadhi.
The teacher of our teachers. Oops, let's hear it one more time.
The teacher of our teachers, Sheikh Qadhi.
Okay, let's see the teacher of his teachers. What he says here. So he's a 20th century. He's taught, you know, someone, you know, big notable scholars like Bin Baz, like the Mufti of Saudi Arabia,
Al-Uthaymeen,
yeah, well. big scholars, big names. And so yeah, like Yasser Qadhi says, he's the teacher of their teachers. And so he actually admits in his book here, in some of his gatherings that were written down, that there is a contradiction.
Yeah. So in the first paragraph, he explains that how you
like the grammatical
like how you explained it, David, the accusative and the nominative.
Yep.
And then in the second paragraph, he says there is a contradiction. Muta'arid is the word in Arabic, which actually means contradiction, clashing, incoherent.
Yeah. They're not harmonious.
Yeah, inharmonious, exclusive to each other. Because of one command saying she should leave with the family and the other command saying she should be left behind.
And that's what he literally says at the end here. He says one of them says that one of them indicates that she is going to travel. The other one says she's not going to travel. So he explicitly calls it a contradiction. So this is a Muslim scholar, more modern as well, like 20th century. Like Yasser Qadhi said, he's the teacher of their teachers. And he's admitting that, yes, this is a contradiction between these two in this example here.
So we can say that the challenge of finding guys, I understand that this would be new information for some people. So we want people to get the main idea. Yeah. For many years, the claim was perfect preservation. There are no differences. You could never, and if you could spend your entire life looking, you would never find two Qurans that differ in even one letter. That claim was completely, utterly, totally false. It was only made as a claim because the Dawah clowns realized that people in the West don't know anything and they can make things up. And they understood that your average Muslim doesn't know anything about the history of the Quran, so they can make things up to give them a kind of false confidence in the Quran. When that claim started to be exposed by showing that there are different versions of the Quran, the response came, but these somehow all go back to Muhammad and they complement each other. They're giving you a deeper understanding with the different readings and they don't contradict each other. So we just saw Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawah going to a scholar. How do we account for these differences? But they don't contradict each other. And here you have a Muslim scholar. Yeah, we got a contradiction right here.
Right.
Exactly.
So guys, anyway, the point is, Muslims of the world, if you actually believe that Ibn Mujahid and the later canonizers and so on, if you believe, matter of fact, if you believe this would be closer to what Sheikh Yasser Qadhi means by the standard narrative. The standard narrative meaning that you can account for the differences among these authoritative versions of the Quran by saying that they somehow all go back to Muhammad. They all go back to Allah. Allah revealed them somehow and they're all reliable and authoritative. Do you believe that from all eternity, Allah, in his giant Frankenstein Quran, which he has in Paris, it's a jumble of all the Qurans put together, like a Frankenstein monster, this Frankenstein Quran that Allah has in paradise within, that this Quran contradicts itself because it contains somehow all these different versions, and there are contradictions. So when you go to one part of Allah's eternal Quran, and it says that Lot's wife stayed back. She did not leave the city. And you go to a different part of Allah's eternal Quran. It says, no, she did leave. She definitely left the city. And then she looked back. Do you believe that Allah's eternal Quran contradicts itself like this? Because if the answer is no, congratulations, you agree with Sheikh Yasser Qadhi that the standard narrative has holes in it. And you should therefore reject all these Dawah clowns who tell you otherwise. because they're saying no, but these different versions don't contradict each other. Yes, they indisputably 100% absolutely do contradict each other. So you need a different explanation. You're not going to get one if you just keep mindlessly agreeing with everything the latest Dawah guy tells you.
Yeah, and by the way, we love, exactly how you said. We love how you think as well, because you thought of exactly what's going to come. Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawah, they asked the Sheikh that very question: which one is in the preserved tablet? And we'll get the answer to that at the end of the presentation.
Oh, nice.
So I love where your mind was going with that. Yeah. So all right. So here's another example here, chapter 17, verse 102.
So here the pronoun changes.
Yeah.
So you don't actually know who's speaking to who, or who's
who has this knowledge,
who the statement applies to.
So in other words, so the verse says, in this reading of it, like Hafs, most majority readings, it will say, Moses said, you have already known. So Moses speaking to Pharaoh here, you have already known that none has sent down these signs except the Lord of the heavens and the earth as evidence. And indeed, I think, O Pharaoh, that you are destroyed. So Moses is saying to Pharaoh, you have known, and based on this knowledge, this is like, the evidence for basically why he should be destroyed. So you go to other readings, we have Al-Jalalain here, and it says a variance. So instead of alimta, you is alamtu, I. So Moses is saying I knew. So one of the readings says Pharaoh, you knew, etc., etc., and then the other one says Moses says to Pharaoh, I Moses, I knew.
Yeah, so it's a pronoun difference.
So this obviously, if you think about it, if this is the conversation happening, and this is supposed to be
that's exactly what I was thinking right there. Wait, this is not. You can't say this is. So I would at least grant the possibility that Allah could reveal a command or something like that in one way and reveal it in another way, and that there could be these multiple meanings and that they could complement each other. But this isn't Allah saying something and I'm going to say it in multiple ways. This is Allah saying what Moses said in history. And you have different readings. So unless Muslims want to claim that Moses said this to Pharaoh and then paused and said, matter of fact, let me say that a completely different way. That means something totally different. Let me say it to you in this other way. Unless they want to believe that Moses is actually saying words and then pausing and then rephrasing it, and that these somehow end up as the same verse of the Quran in multiple variations, it doesn't work. You're not working. The explanation is not working.
I had, and by the way, this is another example of just like literally a vowel difference. So I had a Muslim tell me once when I brought this up, he's like, well, how do you know Moses didn't say both things? Like he said the exact identical thing once, the exact identical thing again, except instead of saying like, I knew, you knew. And so again, we just have to get back to the question we were asking earlier. What's more likely, that you have a scribe writing like alimta and then another one writing alimtu, like just literally one little squiggle difference, or that actually this happened two different times and everything was identical, every single word, every single syllable was identical except for this one verb, I knew, you knew. Okay.
Yeah. There's a comment in the chat that says multiverse confirmed. In other words, there's like multiple universes where one time Moses says one thing and another time he says something else.
Yeah. Okay. So this one here, this one is not really meant to be a contradiction in as much as just a problematic verse, and Muslims had problems understanding this. So it's the same kind of thing here. The vowel is changing at the end of the word.
So the verse here is talking about who was surprised. Again, it's a pronoun difference.
Yeah.
So here it says, you, O Muhammad, wondered. Ajibta, while they mock.
Okay.
The difference is ajibtu, it makes it I wondered, or I am amazed. And it means that Allah is amazed, which is a theological problem.
Yes. So we have a commentary here from Razi where he kind of gives like an objection that people have, and then he gives his kind of take on this for how he tries to solve it. And it's actually kind of funny, his explanation. But in any case, we kind of highlight him here because he talks about like an issue that people have with this. So in other words, we have one reading says, Muhammad, you were surprised. Another reading says, I was surprised. And so they're like, okay, this reading with the Dhamma, which is like the Allah was surprised, they're like, you're attributing to Allah something that's impossible, because surprise only occurs in a state of ignorance. And so this is a problem that Muslims have. And you have different commentaries who, you know, we were reading another commentary earlier, we didn't include it in here though, where one of the readers, one of the Muslim scholars or jurists or whoever, I think it was a scholar of Islam, he said something to the effect of, you know what, it's impossible to attribute ignorance to Allah, so this reading is impossible, it doesn't work. And so, like I said, he comes up with his own explanation for how this works, but this is just a meaning difference here. Was Allah surprised, or was Muhammad surprised? Or, you know, were they both surprised?
They would have to both be surprised, according to Muslims who think that they all complement each other. Allah and Muhammad together were very surprised.
Exactly.
Yeah, notice they say it's impossible. They don't say it's divinely inspired. They don't say it's this way and that way.
We have a chain back to Muhammad.
They don't say it's a ahruf. They say it's impossible.
Yeah. So he's giving like an objection that people are having, and he's like, all right, well,
and it's a canonical reading. Yeah. It's one that was
two canonical readings. Yeah.
Yeah, that they were chosen.
Yep.
So these are in the chosen.
Hey, you could if I were to take this clip and cut it and post it as a separate video, it would be Allah is shocked to learn, or something like that.
Right. And you would be right.
Such and such shocks Allah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, the reading is called Khalaf from Hamza.
Yeah, Hamza. Yeah, one of the readers here. Okay. And so this one is a very well known example. This is in chapter 1, verse 4. So, like, you know, the king of the day of judgment, or the owner of the day of judgment. So Maliki Yawmiddin, Maliki Yawmiddin. So everyone who's kind of familiar with this topic, they've heard of this. But what's really interesting is what At-Tabari says about this. So he kind of represents this early kind of Muslim, 10th century Muslim, and how they understood these variants. So the first reading, he says, like this reading of king, so Malik, this reading, he says, is the more correct reading in my interpretation. Then, you know, my interpretation is that the first one is the more correct reading. And so he says that, and he gives a reason for this. And notice his reason is not, oh, these are both from Allah, and these are both from Muhammad, and Jibril said it both ways. Actually, we have chains that go back to Muhammad, and, you know, we know that Muhammad said it because we have this chain. No, he says, he gives like a logical kind of reasoning for this. He says, so the reading of king is like, okay, you have sovereignty, and it describes exclusive sovereignty and kingship to God. But the owner, he says that it's known that you can be a king. You can't be a king without being an owner, but you can be an owner without being a king.
Right.
So he's saying. So by the way, Muslims, 95% of Muslims are reading Hafs that says Malik. At-Tabari is saying that that's the inferior reading. So it'd be like, you know, Muslims want us to believe that these are all divinely inspired, and that these all kind of are all equally inspired here. Well, if At-Tabari believed that would be like the equivalent of a Christian saying, you know, Mark 1:1 is more correct than John 1:1. No, you wouldn't ever say that as a Christian, because the Bible is inspired by God, all equally inspired. It's not like one part's more inspired than the other part. But here, At-Tabari is saying, actually, this one is more correct. So we just want to kind of highlight how early Muslim scholars took these variants, and they weren't saying, oh, these all came from Allah. Actually, they would argue based on kind of their logical reasons, like you can be a king. If you're a king, you're automatically an owner, but if you're an owner, you're not automatically a king. So therefore, this reading is better.
And also, why are they using logic when Muslims keep telling us that it's the oral tradition that has preserved the Quran? Now they're trying to work out which one's better by using logic rather than the transmission chain, the oral tradition, how they heard it from others.
Yes.
They're trying to work it out with their brain about what's better.
And that's very interesting that you have all these. So you have all these differences in the different versions of the Quran, and it's not a case of let's do textual criticism and try to figure out which is most likely to have gone back to the original. It's just this one doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
Or this makes more sense. So let's go with this one. But the interesting part is some of the decisions that they're making centuries after Muslim scholars have decided what authoritative Islam teaches. And so I'm not talking about this one specifically, but you have later generations of Muslims who are deciding which reading to go with. And by that time, they've all been influenced by centuries of Islamic thinking and whatever their group is and whatever their sect is. And then they get to decide, well, this one doesn't make any sense here. And so we can say, which by the way, just so everyone knows, from the perspective of textual criticism, if you had two passages, if a textual critic is reading two passages and one fit the later theology better, the textual critic, if everything else was equal, would favor the one that's a bit more awkward. Would favor the one that's a bit more awkward, because he would say, okay, we understand why this other variant would arise if people would think, because people were reading it and they said, oh, it doesn't make any sense, so let's change it. They would understand why a variant arose, which they would think it's more confusing to say we had one that made perfect sense and then we changed it to something that was more confusing given theology. And so it's actually the reverse. But you have here guys just saying, okay, this makes no sense. It makes no sense to say it this way.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so Al-Tabari, because he lived in a time, a little like he was contemporary to Ibn Mujahid, like we mentioned earlier. There are some reports that say Ibn Mujahid was one of Al-Tabari's students, but he was living in a period before these 7 readings were canonized. So Al-Tabari himself, he actually had his own book of 20 readings, but that has been lost to history. But he references it throughout his commentary. So he had his own canonization, like his 20 readings that he accepted, and he gave whatever. We don't really know what it says because it doesn't, we don't have it anymore, but he references it throughout other works that he has. And so what's interesting is that what later became the 7 canonical, and then eventually like the 10 canonical, 15th century, 10 canonical, and then the true transmitters for each reader, he actually rejects a number of these what later became canonical readings. And he gives multiple reasons, like, oh, this one's grammatically awkward, or this one doesn't make sense, or this one is not really that well known. But later on, these ones became, canonized, and Muslims are like, oh, these are all divinely inspired. Well, Al-Tabari didn't think that. He didn't know that.
Well, it's also interesting because textual critics, if they saw one version is awkwardly worded and the other one is smooth, they would actually favor if everything else is equal. And if they had other reasons to factor in, then that would be one thing. But if they had just two versions, if they had a textual variant, and one was more awkwardly worded than the other, they would say, well, the awkwardly worded version probably goes back to the original, because it would make more sense for a later scribe to say, let me smooth this over, than it would be for a later scribe to say, well, let me make this a bit more awkward sounding.
Exactly.
So it's just interesting. It's just interesting that they're doing things the opposite way sometime from the way a textual critic would do them.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent point. Yeah, I mean, that's a great parallel to kind of think about how to think about these things and like textual criticism. And so here's one that's also kind of well known as well, but we want to kind of show how these 2 extra chapters that were attributed to Ubay, he had in his Mus'haf, were actually not just him, but there's multiple companions that had these 2 extra chapters. So this is what I was referring to earlier. Well, like when a Muslim brings up, like, the woman caught in adultery, or they bring up like the ending of Mark, or like 1 John 5:7, and they want to debate you about that. Well, okay, give them your answer, give them your position on it, but then say this to them. Okay, so you have some Qurans that have like 111 chapters. Some of them have 114. Then some of them have 116, and so you have like 5 disputed chapters in the Quran. 5 disputed chapters, and so these are 2 of them here. So some companions accepted them, and some of them took them away and didn't, accept them. So
these are 2 small surahs that don't appear in the Quran today, the Hafs Quran. One is called the Al-Hafs,
or the Uthmanic in general, right?
Yeah, all the Othmanic, the one that have the Othmanic.
Wait, so just to clear, because again, you guys, a lot of people here know exactly what you guys are talking about. A lot of people, this is new information for. So just to be clear, Muhammad told his companions, according to the hadith, he told his companions, if you want to learn the Quran, learn it from these 4 people who are considered his best, according to him. And on that list of people, you had Ibn Masud, and you had Ubay ibn Ka'b. And later, we have records of what their Qurans were like later on. We don't have copies of them anymore, but we have records of what their Qurans were. And the Quran that Muslims use today is descended from the version of Zayd ibn Thabit. So he's chosen by Abu Bakr, and he's chosen by Caliph Uthman. His Quran that was sent out as the authoritative Quran by Caliph Uthman has 114 chapters, but 3 of those chapters, Surah 1, Surah 113, Surah 114, were prayers. And you had Ibn Masud. He didn't want prayers in the Quran, because he said, what are you talking about? The Quran is Allah talking to us. It's not us talking to Allah. These prayers are us talking to Allah. It makes no sense. These aren't part of the Quran. Then you had Ubay ibn Ka'b. He had Surah 1, Surah 113, Surah 114. He had these prayers, but he had two additional prayers in his Quran, and Zayd seems to have taken a middle approach. Okay, I'll keep 3 of the prayers and not these other 2. And so these are supposedly the 2 chapters of the Quran that Ubay ibn Ka'b had in his, but Ibn Masud didn't have in his because he rejected all the prayers, and they're not in today's Quran because Zayd ibn Thabit kept 3 of the prayers, but not all 5. These are the remaining 2 that, according to Ubay, who was, according to Caliph Umar, the top reciter of the Quran, and one of Muhammad's 4 chosen people to learn the Quran from, he said this is the Quran, and Zayd didn't. This is what we're dealing with right here?
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you got it. 100%. Yeah.
So these 2 surahs, Muslims will not know them. They're called Al-Hafad and Al-Khala. You won't find them in any Qurans that you buy in the bookshop today. You will only find them if you read certain classical books, like we will mention some scholars that actually do put the stories of how these surahs were in those Qurans.
Yep.
Yeah,
this is, just want to give the reference for the source here. So this is one of the Jalals, famous commentator Al-Jalalain, one of the Jalals, As-Sayuti, Jalaluddin As-Sayuti. This is from his book here, where he gives these references that we're about to quote.
Yeah, and the book is called the Durr al-Mansur, Volume 8, page 695, the online version. He says that those 2 surahs, it was told to us by Musa ibn Ismail that we read it in the Mus'haf of Ubay, like you mentioned, David. They're both in Ubay's Mus'haf. And here it says what these verses were. Oh Allah, we seek help and forgiveness from you. And they said that this is now a surah. Hamad said this is now a surah. Notice the word now.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't before. And he mentions the other surah again in the blue. Oh Allah, we worship you, we pray and prostrate to you. They're like supplications, what Muslims think of as supplications, but they are actually surahs from Allah.
Yep. And notice you also have it in the Mus'haf of Ibn Abbas as well.
Yep.
So you have it in Ubay, you have it in Ibn Abbas, you have it in Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. You also have it of Anas as well.
Yeah, and Anas ibn Malik.
There's a very important quote here at the bottom.
Anas ibn Malik was a very close companion of Muhammad, said, by Allah, the 2 surahs were sent down none other than from heaven. Wallahi in anzalata illa min as-sama'.
Yes.
Meaning that they are from Allah, but you will not find them in the Quran today.
Yes. So all these companions saying these are definitely the Quran. These are in our Quran. They're from none other than from Allah, none other from heaven. Right. And there you go.
So yes, they're lost now.
In fact, there's a Islamic scholar, non-Muslim but Islamic scholar by the name of Sean Anthony, who has a paper written on this. You can find it online, download it for free on academia.edu, and he actually has it titled "The 2 Lost Surahs," and he goes through all the sources and basically concludes that this should be considered as the corpus of within the corpus of the Quran. All these companions and more actually believed it was part of the Quran.
Yep. Anything you want to say, David?
No, it's just interesting because, again, these decisions, so the decision whether to include these 2 chapters or not include them, or whether to include Surah 1, Surah 113, Surah 114 in the Quran, these decisions are made by later people who are disagreeing with people. And the people who are disagreeing, like Ibn Masud disagreed with Ubay ibn Ka'b. They disagree, but they're both on Muhammad's list of the people that are the most reliable and authoritative teachers of the Quran. So it just for me, it connects to what Sheikh Yasser Qadhi is saying. He's saying even today, our greatest scholars do not understand what to do about this stuff. And what do? You go back to the original companions of Muhammad. They didn't know what to do about this stuff. And the ultimate decision is just, well, who's in charge? Oh, Uthman? Uthman's in charge? Okay, Uthman's in charge. Okay, Uthman, you need to figure out something to do about this. Oh, okay, well, I'll just burn all the Qurans and put out an authoritative one. Well, wait a minute. You've got Ibn Masud. He says you got the Quran wrong. And Ubay ibn Ka'b, he said you got the Quran wrong. Well, we don't care about what they said. Let's go with this version of the Quran. When the people he's rejecting, the people he's saying, well, who cares what they said, are the people that Muhammad pointed to who are authoritative on the Quran. But even they didn't agree with each other. And so it's just this, it's this amazing situation where Muslims, did Muhammad know who the best guys on the Quran were? If you say yes, you're in trouble because two of his guys disagreed with each other, and both of those guys disagreed with the later Quran. Yep. So the point is there's no coherent position you can have that makes this all reliable and makes it all make sense. There is no position, which is why Sheikh Yasser Qadhi said, do not let people know about this stuff. You have to keep this stuff away.
Exactly.
And these two chapters that you guys just pointed out. Guys, this is the same Ubay ibn Ka'b that Sheikh Yasser Qadhi was talking about when he said, once he saw Muhammad claiming that the Quran was revealed in all these different ways and only saw it after the companions started noticing differences. And then Muhammad said, oh yeah, it was revealed in 7 different ways. And then he starts having doubts about Islam. That's this guy. It's the same guy.
And by the way, these are actually called surahs as well. So Muslims who say, "Oh no, these are just prayers," there's no prayer called surah so and so, surah so and so.
That's why we've highlighted the companion Hamad saying this is a surah.
Yeah. So that's one of the arguments that Sean Anthony uses in his article to show you don't have prayers being called surah so and so, surah so and so. So the fact that they were called surahs means that they actually did believe that these were the Quran. Now, some Muslims will say that, hey, yeah, these were the Quran, but they were just abrogated later on, and Ubay didn't know that, so he included them in his Mus'haf. Yeah. So you have all different kind of excuses, but the point is that you had all these different Qurans from among the companions.
But that doesn't work. The abrogation excuse doesn't work because
that's another ad hoc excuse.
Abrogation has to happen from Allah and Muhammad. Yeah. You can't abrogate after he's dead.
Exactly.
Companions can't abrogate verses after Muhammad's dead.
Yeah.
Because it needs to come from Allah, right? That's my take on it. So actually, it doesn't stop there. If you read a little bit more in the same volume, there is actually something called al-Qunut, verses that are no longer in the Quran today. Abdul Aziz ibn Marwan, the brother of the caliph at the time, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, his brother Abdul Aziz, Muhammad ibn Nasr from Yazid, he said, Abdul Aziz ibn Marwan sent to Abdullah ibn Zurair, saying to him, by Allah, I see you are averse. I do not see you reading the Quran. He said, yes, by Allah, I read the Quran, and I read of it what you do not read of it. I read of it what you do not read of it. So Abdul Aziz said to him, what is it that I do not read of the Quran? And he said, Al-Qunut. And Ali ibn Abi Talib, Muhammad's cousin, told me it's from the Quran. Mm-hmm. And if you have a look at the verses of the Qunut, which we've got in the red box here, these verses are not in the Quran today. They are called a supplication or a dua. And
we have it translated here on the bottom.
Yeah, we have it translated if you want to. It's, oh Allah, we worship you, we pray.
Go ahead, read it. Yeah, go ahead, read it.
It says, oh Allah, we worship you, we pray and prostrate to you and seek you earnestly. We hope for you, your mercy, and fear your torture. Indeed, your torture will befall the disbelievers. These are the verses that are there. So
this was considered part of the Quran according to some companions, like Ali, for example.
Yes. So that's from Ali,
Muhammad's
cousin. And he heard it from Muhammad, and now it's not in the Quran. And also notice that another companion called Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami,
Yeah.
He used to recite those verses to Muslims, and he said that Ibn Mas'ud, one of the people that you mentioned, David,
Yeah.
who Muhammad said to get the Quran from, he says that he heard it from Muhammad.
Exactly.
So Abu Abdurrahman as-Sulami heard it from Ibn Mas'ud, who heard it from Muhammad.
And Abu Abdurrahman is a very important figure because he's in the chain for Hafs. So in the chain, it goes Hafs, it goes Asim, Abu Abdurrahman, and then it goes to the companion, it goes to Uthman, Ali, Zayd, Ubay, and then to Muhammad. So that's he's in this chain, and yet he differed with Hafs on what the Quran actually consists of.
Yeah, so if you open the Quran, you see this, some of the Qurans today, the Hafs, you see this chain here. They're crazy. They put this guy's name in the chain, Abi Abdurrahman, and then you read about him. He was reading completely different verses that are not in the Quran today.
Yeah.
So just to be clear on what you just said, so if people were to do what the version of Isnad criticism with the Quran that similar to what they do with the Hadith, you want, hey, where's this coming from? Show us the names of who's getting what from who. So it's Hafs, he's getting it from Asim. He gets it from this guy, Abi Abdul Rahman, and you're saying that guy had a different Quran.
Yep. And also what's also interesting as well, and maybe we can come back another time to talk about this kind of chain of narration mess, because it's a huge problem. We can give all the references for Hafs being a liar and all that stuff. But just kind of a note on this, it says that Abu Abdurrahman learned it from Uthman, Ali, Zayd, and Ubay. But there's a hadith that's authentic that says he didn't learn the Quran from Ali. So there's a hadith that contradicts this chain that the Muslims consider to be authentic. So there's other holes in this in the narrative.
Yeah, this chain is.
It seems like all there is holes.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, even if you go by one way, you find holes. You go another way, you find holes. Yeah, this guy recited, and he was teaching people these verses as of the Quran. That he was telling them this is the Quran.
Yeah,
and we don't find those verses today in the Quran.
This is this just looks like a giant mess.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It is.
It looks like a huge giant mess. And guys, you can see, everyone watching, do you understand now why Sheikh Yasser Qadhi is, dude, don't stop talking about this. Stop talking about this right now. All it's going to lead to is doubts. And Muhammad Ajab, no, we have to clarify it, get to the bottom of this.
Take my class. Take my class.
Take my class. Just take my class, dude. Talk to me afterwards. This is a huge, giant mess, especially for anyone who's claiming like perfect preservation right down to the... I mean, just imagine, you've just gone through some examples, but Muhammad's companions couldn't agree on what's supposed to be in the Quran. You go to one guy, it's 111 chapters. You go to another guy, it's 116. You go to the one that became authoritative, it's 114. You've got Muhammad saying that there are these different aruf. It's revealed in these different ways. Okay, let's burn everything, cover up all the differences. That's what Caliph Uthman did. We're going to burn them all. Yet they end up, even after that, they end up with all these differences. Sometimes, and you end up with lots of differences. And then you get some guy who comes along and says, actually, I'm going to pick these 7. And then people are coming along later. Why are you picking those 7? Those 7 aren't, you didn't even pick the best ones or better ones than those. And 7, why'd you even pick 7? People are going to confuse that with the 7 aruf, and we don't even know what those are. It's just going to cause more confusion. So how about 10? So then it's 7, and it goes to 10. And then, wait a minute, all the students of all these guys are contradicting each other, and they can't even agree on what their teacher said. Okay, we'll pick 2 guys as representatives of each of the 10. And so we've got these 20. And you look and they have contradictory meanings of their verses. And somehow you get to the 20th century and Muslims say, perfect preservation, not one letter's difference anywhere between any 2 manuscripts. And people don't know any better. So they buy this nonsense. And then when it gets pointed out to them, hey, wait a minute, you're lying. We've got 26 different Qurans right here, right in front of your face in Arabic, 26 different Arabic Qurans. How do you explain this? But they don't contradict each other. And they do.
They do.
They do.
Oopsie.
Oops. So we have a surprise here at the end, where they ask the Sheikh, okay, they say to us, okay, so you guys are saying Muhammad said it like this, he said it like this, he said it like this, he said it like that. And we've already explained how the early Muslim scholars didn't necessarily view the readings like that, but we know Muslims view them like that today. So he asked the question to the Sheikh, so which one is on the preserved tablet? And you're going to love the answer from
Are you
the
ready
Sheikh.
for the answer?
Here we go.
The Prophet said it like this and he said it like that. Allah said it like this and he said it like that. Because they keep asking the question, so which one is in the preserved tablet? What's the answer to that question? The preserved tablet is that of the unseen, and we will not be given access to that.
Well, there you have it, folks. You have no idea. But that was actually similar to what Sheikh Yasser Qadhi said when Muhammad Hijab tried to get him to say. So Yasser Qadhi was he was saying stuff that was extremely damaging to what Muslims believe. He's saying, hey, there are these different qira'at and ahruf, and we actually do not know what to do with this stuff. We just don't know what to do with all these different qira'at and ahruf, and our scholars, they say things, but now we're being called out by non-Muslim scholars, and they're right. The non-Muslim scholars are actually right. Our explanations do not work. So he's saying all of this, and he's telling Muhammad Hijab in that famous interview that they deleted, do not bring this up. Stop talking. Please stop talking about this right now. Muhammad Hijab, please stop talking. He should have just left the interview. It wouldn't have been nearly as damaging. But Muhammad Hijab, see, Muhammad Hijab's problem was he thought there was actually a solution to this, and there isn't one. And Yasser Qadhi knows that Yasser Qadhi knew there wasn't a solution. Hijab didn't. Hijab thought, well, I've got the guy who literally wrote the book on the sciences of the Quran sitting in front of me. He's going to be able to clarify this. And so Yasser Qadhi talks about the different qira'at and ahruf, and you should never share this information with the Muslim community in general. This is only for people who are becoming scholars. This is the only people who can be trusted with this information. The Muslim community cannot be trusted with this information. Yasser Qadhi keeps warning. And then to sort of try and fix everything, Hijab says, if I gave you some blank paper, could you put what is the official Quran on there? Should have been the easiest question in the world. And Sheikh Yasser Qadhi said, what? I'm sure people remember Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, not an easy question. It's not an easy question. Sounds like what that guy was saying right there. We don't know. If we were to say, what is the actual Quran on the tablet, and how would we know that? We've got so many differences. We've had so many problems over the centuries. We couldn't do it. And it just destroys the entire narrative. It destroys it. And again, the takeaway question is, Muslims, how in the name of common sense do you keep going back to the same guys who do nothing but lie to you over and over again? How do you keep going back to the same guys where their scholars are saying, keep this secret from them, keep this secret, hide this information from them, conceal this, do not tell people this, give them lies. It's better for them. How do you keep going back to the same guy who believe it's the same guys who think it's okay to give you lies to keep you from doubting your religion? How you do that? I don't know.
Yes, and another question is, did Allah preserve it like he promised? Because remember, it's a promise in the Quran, Surah 15, verse 9, we will preserve it. So has he? And if he hasn't, then he's not God. And that's the end of it.
And you know what? I thought about this as well. I haven't really developed it as much as an argument, but I've been kind of thinking about it. There is a verse in the Quran, chapter 4, verse 82, which says, like, if this book is from other than Allah, some will say, many contradictions, but actually the Arabic is ikhtilafin, which means differences. So it says if there are many differences, then this book is not from Allah. And, of course, there's the subject of how many is many differences, but I think we've shown plenty of differences, just in these 7 examples, but there's multiple, I think Hatun is like over 9,000 or so.
Right.
She's documented thousands of differences. So by that verse, if it's not from Allah, then there'll be many differences. Well, we can show many differences, many different versions, and by the Quran, therefore it's not from God.
Well, so multiple layers of problems here. So one, given what Allah claims, so if you ignored modern Muslim dawah and so on, and you just said, okay, here's what Allah says about the Quran. He says it doesn't contain these, it doesn't contain differences or discrepancies or however people want to translate it. And so, well, given all these things we have, namely, you could pick a version, you go to Hafs and you find contradictions within the Quran, but then you factor in different versions of the Quran and you have contradictions among the different versions of the Quran. So the question for Muslims would be, one, do these things meet the requirement of Surah 4, verse 82? Do these differences add up to enough of a problem? But then two, since you have all these different versions of the Quran and all these problems over time, has Allah kept his promise in Surah 15:9 to preserve the Quran? So keep in mind, that's without thinking about modern dawah. If you just looked at those claims in the Quran, is Allah correct? Has Allah made his case? That's if you ignore the dawah guys. If you go to the modern dawah guys, they spent decades just completely lying to people and thinking obviously it's indisputable they believe that it's okay to deceive even Muslims if it helps you have a false confidence in Islam. They would rather you have a false confidence built upon a foundation of lies than for you to know the truth and doubt and leave Islam. How do you trust those guys? I'm legitimately trying to understand it. Apart from just massive brainwashing that somehow takes place in the Muslim community, where you're incapable of questioning these guys, no matter how much they lie to you. I can't understand it. Again, if it were a politician, if it were a Christian scholar, if you catch the guy lying over and over again, how do you keep going back to him? I couldn't do it. I wouldn't trust a person anymore. If you told me one flat out lie and I found out it was a lie, I would not trust you anymore. You may be saying true things in the future, and you may be able to win back my trust after explaining the lie and then showing how you've changed, your character has improved, then I might come to trust you in the future. But if I catch you lying and then you tell me another lie and then you tell me another lie and then you tell me, why would I trust you ever? I don't. And yet the entire dawah community, I've never seen, guys, I've been to prison. I've seen every con man, grifter, liar you can think of. I have never in my life seen people who lie as frequently and with as little concern for being exposed as the dawah guys. No one can hold a candle to them. Everyone else, when they lie, they try to make sure that people can't expose their lies. That's sort of fundamental to lie. The dawah guys, they just don't care because they know their community will never hold them accountable for their lies. This is massively dysfunctional. Dysfunctional. All right, guys. Anything else you want to share or sum up or anything else before we take some super chats?
Yeah, no, that was a great summary from you, and I think that we covered all of the things that we wanted to do, right?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us and for sharing your knowledge with us as well, and your explanations are really good.
And thanks for going live a little earlier than normal for us as well. We really appreciate that, and it's really been an honor to be with you, and hopefully we can have more in the future, more streams in the future.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And guys, anytime you have anytime you're putting together a presentation or something like that and you want to get out there, let me know. My channel is totally open because we know how important this is. The dawah guys are clinging to some versions of some argument. They're trying to hold things together. If anyone wants the big picture of what's going on, if you go back 20 years, the attitude in the dawah community was, we don't actually have to do anything because we can sit back and we're going to win by birth rates. So Islam wins. We're just trying to speed it up a little with the dawah. We're trying to speed up the victory of Islam with our dawah. So we're going to keep lying to help us spread Islam even faster, but we don't actually need to. We don't need to do anything. We win by birth rates. Then you ended up with, in recent years, the avalanche of apostasy. So the apostasy rate among young Muslims goes from close to 0 to 24% in about 15 years. And Muslims start panicking. And then the attitude changes from, we don't have to do anything. We can sit back and watch and we win by birth rates. The attitude goes to, well, if we sit back and do nothing, we're in trouble because the apostasy rates are accelerating much faster. And pretty soon the birth rates are not going to. So we need to do something now. We need to do something. And so All of Dawah right now is basically trying to hold things together, trying to plug the leaks in the boat long enough for Islam to take over certain areas and they can silence people by force. So they're telling every lie and trying to hold on to any argument they can. They're trying to hold it together long enough for the birth rates to get them to a point where they can just silence people, for stop people from criticizing Islam. That's what they're trying to do right now. We're trying to not let them do that. We're trying to make sure, no, you actually are not going to rescue Islam by lying. And so what do we need to do here? You got to keep exposing them. And so you got to learn this information. And guys, if a bunch of people learn this information, if a bunch of people, you could just focus on one of the examples. Like you could focus on the example of Lot's wife. Learn that, take that clip. You can download this video, take that clip, just take the screenshot or something like that, and just go share that all over the place. If hundreds or thousands of people do that, over time you destroy another myth. So what's the myth being spread right now? The Dawah community is spreading a lie that we can account for all these differences in these different qira'at and so on because they don't contradict each other. They complement each other because they all go back to Allah somehow. They all go back to Muhammad or something. No, they actually contradict each other. So you're lying. You're lying here. So you want to expose it until people have no confidence in their leaders. They have no confidence in the scholars. They have no confidence in the Dawah guys. And what do? Eventually, they say, we can't trust what we hear from these guys. These are the biggest bunch of liars the world has ever seen. We need to investigate this for ourselves. That's when they're on their way out of Islam. And that's when it all collapses. And so the point is, this is some of the most important information, and it's something where people like me, I can show you what like Sahih al-Bukhari or Sahih Muslim says and give you examples of changes in the Quran. As far as like differences in the Arabic and so on, that's why I need people like Jai and Daughter of Christ here sharing this information. So yeah, guys, again, anytime you want access to my channel, no problem to share any information you want.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's very gracious. Thank you.
And guys, again, there's a link to their channel. There's a link to their channel in the description box. And I know it's late. I know it's super late for you guys. So if you want to head out now, because I'm going to take some super chats.
Yeah, we'll probably have to head out now. But yeah, thanks so much for having us on again. God bless you. And yeah, we'd love to do it again sometime. We'll let you know if we have something, presentation or something.
All right. Awesome stuff. All right. Catch you guys later.
Thanks so much. God bless.
God bless you.
I love all that stuff with the Qira'at guys, with the different Qurans. Again, because Nabil, long time ago, I did not agree with him. Turns out he was right. I'm wrong. I apologize. I did not understand how important this stuff was way back in the day when, matter of fact, I'm not sure. I've only told a couple of people this, but this is like probably maybe 2007 or 2008. Me and Nabil sat down and we made a list. I don't have that list anymore. I do not even remember what was on that list except like a couple of things. We made a list of the things that we wanted to eventually accomplish. Like, okay, we've got things, we kind of just do things as they pop up, but long term, what do we want to get done in our lives? And some of those things, I think probably most of those things actually happened, because one of them was like Nabil wanted to write a testimony book and so on. He eventually did that. It was a while later and stuff. One of the things I remember off that list was we wanted to get Ibn Abi Dawud's Kitab al-Masahif translated into English, because passages have been translated, but not the entire thing. Ibn Abi Dawud's Kitab al-Masahif was this book that's about differences in the Quran. So that's when you hear that Ubay ibn Ka'b and Ibn Masud had different chapters in the Quran, that's from Ibn Abi Dawud's Kitab al-Masahif. He shared that information. We wanted to get that translated. We never did, but it's something to think about for the future. But the reason Nabil thought that was so important was because of how this has been built up in the Muslim community, the miraculous preservation of the Quran. And he thought if you can actually show Muslims what a complete mess the history of the Quran is, it's a mess. You saw from this presentation what a mess it is. It's every couple centuries you end up with a guy going, oh, how are we going to deal with all this this huge mess and all these differences? And then someone saying, oh, we'll do it like this. We'll just stick with this and we'll throw all that out. And people go, okay. And the next generation, they think that what that guy chose, what that guy decided is authoritative revelation from Allah or something, even though it makes no sense. So anyway, it's got to keep going hard. And so that's why it's everyone should be subscribing to Jai and Daughter of Christ channel. The link's in the description box, because you definitely want to see everything they put out, and you want to be sharing that information, because this, again, in my own mind, I would not think that textual variance or confusion about canonization or something like this, or this like massive, huge issue, from the way Muslims think, it's devastating. It's like completely destroys their confidence in Islam when they find out about it. And that's why Sheikh Yasser Qadhi and Muhammad Hijab had to take down their stuff. I mean, they took that interview down. It was destroying Muslims. Guess what? That was tip of the iceberg stuff. That was tip of the iceberg. That was just giving Muslims a little bit of information, letting them know, you not realize we got a problem here? There's a little bit, guys, it's not as clear as we think it is. That was absolutely devastating to Muslims. Imagine if they find out the actual history of their book and who made these decisions along the way. It would be absolutely devastating. I do want to, before we close it, so we're going to take some super chats, then we're going to watch a little video of Sneeko. We watched it previously, but in the light of what we just discussed, we're gonna revisit this little clip of Sneeko, just the beginning, to show how absolutely despicably deceptive the Dawah guys are. So we'll take some super chats, and then we'll go back. We'll revisit Sneeko here, because this is information that he will never get from his Dawah guys. Kai here. So Kai was the one who was saying that he was with a Christian group in the 90s, and they had discussions with Muslims, and they didn't know anything. They didn't know much about the Quran, but they used what we call the Islamic dilemma now, that the Quran affirms the Christian scriptures, yet contradicts the Christian scriptures. And they said that actually worked. That worked out well. And then here he says they got threatened. That the Muslim response was to threaten them. That's interesting. Shocker, but I'm not really shocked. Sahih Christian says, by Ezra. Ezra, of course, for anyone who's new here, is the son of God, according to Jews, according to the Quran. The Quran says that Jews believe Ezra is the son of God. And in the Hadith, you find out that Jews worship Ezra. You can ask every Jew. You can go to every single Jew on the planet. Millions of them. You could go to every last one. Do you worship Ezra? No. You believe Ezra is the son of God? No. What are you talking about? Somehow Allah says, no, that's actually it's actually what Jews believe. By Ezra, it was in the Gospel of Hebrews, not the book. An early church father cited the adulterous woman story and attributed it to the Gospel of Hebrews. Masab should become the smile of Islam. We're talking about Islam. Masab has one of the most epic stare downs ever. Looks very intense. He would do very well if he ever had. Well, he's been in jail and so on. So, but yeah, he'd do very well walking into a prison looking like that. People wouldn't want to mess with him. But he looks a little strange when he smiles, like he's kind of forcing himself to smile. So yeah, you could consider that the smile of Islam. Greetings from Finland. I was fasting from YouTube for Easter's Great Fast and started watching D-Wood and AP again after it ended, watching every video. I'm now only at the 2 weeks old lives. Yeah, we have a lot of live streams. By the way, guys, I've been thinking, just because we get lots of requests, I get all these complaints. Like after I post like a 3 or 4 hour live stream, the people will come in and complain. Why is this 3 hours long? I don't have that attention span. I don't have 3 hours. And I'm always like, why are you watching it then? The YouTube is filled with videos. We have tons of short videos. If you don't like long live streams, some people do like long live streams. Some people sit there with the entire long live stream. Some people hang out. We hang out like a community. We hang out the entire time. Some people like that. What if you don't like that? It's easy. Don't click on it. So I get I just wonder, because there's most of the videos on YouTube I would not want to watch. It never crosses my mind to go around all those videos and say, I don't like this. I wouldn't watch this. Okay, well then don't watch it. You have that. That's you have your own computer and you have your own ability to click on things. So I don't understand why people complain. Why is this video 4 hours long? Because some people watch 4 hour videos. Some people do. If you don't, watch something else. So that's my normal attitude. But at the same time, I understand the point, and lots of times in our live streams, we'll talk about something like even during this live stream, they gave multiple examples. Jai and Daughter of Christ gave multiple examples of sort of contradictions in different Qurans or so on, or various problems. I'm thinking I might make a separate channel for like clips like that. In other words, if I can take a section, like a 5-minute section, and it's a coherent point where someone explained, like again, if Jai and Daughter of Christ just explain one difference between two versions of the Quran, and it's sort of a standalone video, I'm thinking I might, after our live streams, chop up a couple of sections where we're making one point and post that on a separate channel for people who don't want to watch the entire live stream. So anyway, long story short, our brother from Finland here, if you don't have time to watch the full live streams or something like that, I might be posting like the separate little sections on a different channel for people who aren't going to watch the really long live streams. Let's see. Hope either Jai or DOC is Turk or I'll have to unsub. That's weird. Most people have the opposite reaction. Like they better not find out that they're Turks. Random jizya, just to remind you, don't eat paper Quran again. Instead, make cheeseburger with ketchup, written Quran verses instead. I can do both. The Great North strikes again, eh? The Great North. Just take out the great part and say the North. And A. You see, we burned the Quran, but he burned it not. But so it was made to appear to him, and those who differ only strengthen our iman. I've been thinking about that as a response to any question or objection that anyone could ever offer. I mean, Muslims, like a Muslim, what? Explain this to me. I'll go, first explain that you're really here. Show me how I know that you're really here and Allah's not tricking me. How do I know Allah's not just given what you believe, how do I know that Allah's not deceiving me into thinking you're asking that question? Now, keep in mind, you want to ask, you want to actually answer the person's question, but you also want to raise some problems that his theology causes. And one of the biggest problems is that they really seem to believe a lot that Allah tricks and deceives people into believing things that aren't real. My leather straps are happy to see you're live today. Here are some shekels to cover my jizya. Peace be upon you. Yes, we like all the shekels. We like electronic shekels, but we also got the paper shekels right here. I wish I'd thought about this before I left Israel, because I would have like brought back piles of shekels to make it rain shekels on me sometimes. It'd be fun stuff. Stefan says, hijab voice, you see, the eyes are the leather strap of the anus. You don't need to read all these. Just stay as the leather strap. Yes, it is nonsensical. Anything you read as with a Muhammad hijab voice sounds more convincing to Dawah fans. So remember to talk like that. Imagine being named after a man who married a 6-year-old little girl. That is correct. And is that, by the way, is that, I would guess that's the most popular name in the world, just because Muslims in every place, they all, like, it's very common to name their kids Muhammad. But it's like, hey, let's all name our kid after a guy who married a 6-year-old girl. Uthman was a bad dude. He was the corn pop of Arabia. Yes, he was. He was a bad dude. Ibn Mujahid beat the Quran out of the dude. He literally beat the Quran out of the dude. Douglas said, do you have a Rumble? No. But that's another one I want to start. Because, guys, it's a situation where, as I was just pointing out, the Dawah guys understand that they're in a race. They understand. The rate of apostasy is accelerating rapidly. But they're looking at the birth rates and saying, hey, if we can hold things together, if we could just hold the line long enough to where we start taking over areas and then we can execute people for criticizing Islam, then we'll win that way. We don't want that. We don't want them to win that way. So we also have to understand that we're in the middle of a race right now. We're in a race. We're in a race to accelerate that apostasy rate even more and to see the collapse of Islam before it can take over and force people into saying what they want to say. So that would include using everything we have available to us And that would include not just YouTube, but, X and Rumble and all these other sites. And so that's something, no, I don't have a Rumble, but I'll probably make one. In fact, if I'm setting up another YouTube channel for like short segments, it'd be weird to call it should call the channel Inside David and AP's Shorts or something like that. I don't know what to call it. I don't know how to call it with short. I don't know how to call it shorts, like short versions. I don't know how to call it shorts without people thinking about being in our shorts. I don't know. But maybe if I'm setting up another YouTube channel, maybe I'll put that one on Rumble as well, and then I could just upload the videos there as well. Pants Schmantz says, this has been super interesting and enlightening. What a wonderful gift you provided. Really, thank you. We'll try to memorize this. Yeah, so guys, notice there was lots of information there. That's all information that you could learn. You might not know the Arabic. You might not want to take the time to learn Arabic and so on, but getting the meaning of everything that was saying and learning that, you will already be light years ahead of the vast majority of Muslims that you'll ever come into contact with. So it's good to learn. But again, as I pointed out, even for people who don't have time to learn all of this, you don't have to. Learn one thing, learn one example, learn one source, learn one verse where you have differences and so on. Learn one thing and share that. If 1,000 people who think, well, I can't learn all this, well, guess what? If 1,000 people who aren't going to learn tons of stuff learn one thing that actually refutes a lie, that's huge. That's huge stuff. Chloe says, please, if you can, to everyone watching, please help support the hero of Stoke. So that is the She Was 9 Years Old guy. See my community for this link to help him. I love you all. Chloe. So Chloe, on Chloe's channel, she has a link to a GoFundMe. Apparently, the She Was 9 Years Old guy, is in a bit of trouble. Once people found out who he was, looks like it's affecting his, and I'm hearing this lots, people. And I don't know what the situation is with Jai and Daughter of Christ. So notice they don't want to show their faces and so on. When people show their faces, if they can be harassed, if the Dawah guys find out who someone is, and that person just has a normal job where they work somewhere, they start contacting and harassing the person. As soon as they find out like how to identify you, they harass you send threats and so on until you end up losing your job. That's their goal. It's a warning. Do not ever criticize Islam or we will destroy your life. So I've seen this multiple times where someone who puts their face out there or someone can find out their name, then they become targets. It might not be target of actual violence, like people try to kill them or something, but you harass them, you harass their families, you harass their work and so on. Then they lose their job. Looks like that's what happened. I normally try to vet GoFundMes because it is easy to fake. Put up a fake GoFundMe and so on. So I normally want a little vetting. Chloe, I see you've already made a donation, so you can post comments. You've already posted one. You posted, "You're my hero." Ask him to get in touch with me and AP because we'd be happy we've been wanting to have him on for a while. But if this is actually, we just want to verify this is actually him, but we'll have him on. He can explain the situation, explains what happened. And no doubt it would not take us long to help him out with what's happened to him. Because we know the people who watch, there are a lot of generous people in the world who are happy to support other people for doing the work they're doing. So we would be totally happy. We just we'd like some confirmation that this is definitely him, and that this is the situation he's in. But anyway, that works out well because we'd love to have him on. And from Chloe again, Hero of Stoke shares your last name. He is Matthew Wood and a Kung Fu master. I'm not a Kung Fu master. Help his martial arts gym recover. So apparently he's got some trouble here. But yeah, we will check that stuff out. The problem I have is if people know there's contradictions, why do they keep lying? Do people not care about their salvation? I guess this would be a kind of deeper problem. So the meaning here is your average Muslim doesn't know there are any contradictions. Your average Muslim doesn't know about the history of the Quran. Your average Muslim believes, perfect preservation or miraculous preservation or something like that. So you understand why that person keeps believing. So the question is, if the scholars know, hey, there's a contradiction between this Quran and that Quran, or between this Quran verse and that Quran verse, and they go around saying, no contradictions, perfect preservation. If they know they're lying, like what? Like, do you really not care? I mean, if you got, it's one thing to not know that there are lies here. The scholars, they know that there are lies. They know about the lies. They know about the contradictions, and they keep saying otherwise. And it's like, what kind of person is this? You're a person who believes that you're going to stand before Allah and give an account. But guess what? If you believe that it's acceptable in your religion, that it's okay to lie to keep people in Islam, then you think it's okay. But the question that then arises is, how could you believe that you are defending the truth when you think that you have to defend it with lies? You believe that you have to lie to defend your religion, and that your God believes that it's okay to spread his religion by lying. How do you not see the problem? How can you think that you have the truth and yet believe that you can only defend it by lies? That's the real issue. Abu Ahruf says only holes. Holes in the narrative. Yeah, needs to be a site called Only Holes, and it's just problems with the Quran and any various holes in the narrative. Mo said, Surah 234. Oh, Mo said, okay, if I can't come in at the front, I will come in at the back door and come inside. Wait, what is this? Hey, you tried to get me to read some perverted stuff there. What's wrong with you? It's a good Christian show. We don't even have any atheists on the show now, so you have no excuse. Got a Christian, and I was met by some other Christians, and you see people come along with creepy stuff. Solitary Emmy. Oh, that was a super sticker. Thank you, Emmy. I'm sorry, but it's a semi-actual quote. Oh, so you're pointing out that this is something actual. This is something that was an actual quote. Sam says, Sahih al-Bukhari 4788, Aisha said to the Prophet, I feel that your Lord hastens in fulfilling your wishes and desires. Even Aisha realized Muhammad made up Islam and each revelation is self-serving. Yeah, so this ties into just like how do you not pick up on things over time? You get a kind of vibe, even if you don't know logic or you just pick up on things. Something's not right here. So that's what was the case when Ubay ibn Ka'b finds out that different Muslims are reciting the Quran differently during the time of Muhammad. This is during the time of Muhammad. And one guy's reciting the Quran one way, another guy's reciting the Quran a different way. And then it gets brought before Muhammad. Why are people reciting the Quran differently? And Muhammad's response is, oh yeah, Allah revealed it in all these different ways. And this is Ubay. This is one of the best guys on the Quran. And Ubay's going, what? You've been revealing the Quran in all these different ways? How do we not know about this? I've been with you for a long time. I had no clue you're revealing the Quran in all these different ways. And it causes him doubt. And think, why would that cause him doubt? Because there was a perfectly reasonable alternative explanation. Namely, Muhammad's getting old. He forgets things. He recited it to someone in the wrong way. That person memorized it in the wrong way and went out and continued reciting it. And then you ended up with different versions of the Quran that are being recited. That's the obvious implication. Muhammad can't acknowledge that he's got a problem. So he says what? He says, yeah, Allah revealed it in all these different ways. So yeah, when I told it to you guys in one way and then I told it to him in a different way, it wasn't because I messed up. No, it's because Allah did it. Allah wanted it in these different ways. And so he picked up on that. There's a problem here. Aisha, when she sees, isn't it interesting that every time Muhammad has some perverted fantasy in his head, he gets a revelation saying, yeah, you can do that perverted, horrible thing that you wanted, Muhammad. She picks up on this. So even Muhammad's companions spotted these problems, but amazingly, Muslims of the world today think you're bad and evil if you're at all suspicious of this. Well, Muhammad's own companions were. It's like if someone says Muhammad was demon possessed, Muslims react, no, how dare you say that? That was Muhammad's first impression. Muhammad thought he was demon possessed. How are you going to blame some random person for going, this guy sounds demon possessed, when Muhammad thought he sounded demon possessed? Super chat. Oh, no comment. Thank you, Mimi. I'm not reading this guy's comments anymore. This version 5 of the 1 pound Islam was debunked today here on this stream. Yes, it was. And guys, if you look at the information that was shared just here, I mean, think about how devastating that is to what your average Muslim believes. It's completely devastating. Just finding out that these issues were there in the history of the Quran, that there was all this confusion the entire way through the Quran, and it exists to this day. Muhammad's own companions were confused about what was supposed to be in the Quran. You had all these decisions made by people who were not prophets along the way, but they just decide, oh, we'll stick with these 7. No, that's not enough. Let's go with these 10. You have all these decisions along the way, and then you have Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, who wrote the book on the sciences of the Quran. And he's saying our greatest scholars cannot make sense of this stuff. Our greatest scholars. That's completely devastating to a Muslim who thinks it's all completely clear, cut and dry, one Quran. That's the way it is. It's devastating. But guess what? This one stream, not enough. Need a bunch of them, need to keep using it. People need to learn the information and keep sharing it. Oh, this is a good idea. I don't know how I'll work this into a title, but don't call it shorts, call it Aisha-sized videos. That's actually good. Aisha-sized videos, meaning short videos. But then if we're making it Aisha-sized videos, we'd have to make them all like 9 seconds. Or I guess I could say, to correspond to the 9, we'll make it 9. Every video has to be 9 minutes or less. It has to be under 9 minutes. That'd be good. That'd be a good little joke. I might do that. I'm going to think about it. God bless you, brother David, for your unrelenting work in exposing the lies of those serpents. They have nothing. That's why they never talk about the Quran. That's true. They have nothing. Guys, the reason they cannot stop using lies to prop up their religion is because they know they got a problem. They know they got a problem. And we can't let them get away with it. And it's hard. It's real hard. It takes a long time. It does work. It may take 10 years, 15 years to expose a lie to where the actual Muslim community starts catching on. It works. It works. You just got to keep at it. I was going to give AP shekels to buy a new Lambo, but I guess those will go for David's brother now to rebuild his Muay Thai madrasa. Yeah, that will. Yeah, AP doesn't need another Lambo. Running Decade says, of all the arguments against Islam, which one do you think makes more Muslims get doubts and leave the religion? And what's the strongest one? Is it the same? Now, Running Decade, we actually have some intel on this, but I'm not sure it's decisive, but it's relevant. But years ago, I don't have it right here. AP actually has the screenshot. Years ago, Muhammad Hijab did a poll. He asked Muslims, of all the reasons for doubting your religion, so he's talking to Muslims here. Hey, you Muslims, when you Muslims start to doubt your religion, saying, so you're still Muslims, you're not apostates, but you Muslims, when you start to doubt your religion, what is it that's causing your doubts? Is it because someone's making some strong case for another religion? Or is it because people are attacking the existence of God? Or because people are showing you that the Quran conflicts with science? Or is it problems with Muhammad's morality? I forget the exact examples, but he gave a selection. And by far the biggest answer was problems with Muhammad's character. Now, the reason I say this isn't decisive is he didn't put problems with the preservation of the Quran or something on there. In other words, he didn't put like the collapse of Dawah arguments or something on there. So I don't know exactly how that would rank. If you're talking about arguments that are, different people have different arguments that they like I like the Islamic dilemma. I can't say that that's the most effective argument against Islam. It's just the one I like best. But it's for a variety of reasons. We know that problems with Muhammad's character cause a lot of doubts in the Muslim community. So if you wanted to say what's going to be most effective in causing Muslims to doubt, we have reasons to think that problems with Muhammad's character, and so this would be things like Muhammad having sex with a 9-year-old girl, Muhammad taking the wife of his own adopted son, and after causing the divorce by lusting after her, Muhammad telling his followers they can have up to 4 wives when he got 9. Things like this, problems with Muhammad. We know that is among the biggest. I'm not sure because Hijab didn't do a poll on the collapse of these Dawah arguments or finding out that their scholars are a bunch of liars. I don't know how that would rank. But I would say if you wanted to pick one, probably go with problems with Muhammad. But I would say this is important enough, given how it exposes the lies, that you should probably be going to this one. So I would, if I were you and I was trying to think what is going to be most effective, I would learn 1 or 2 problems with Muhammad, share those widely, and learn a couple of these problems with the Quran and share that widely. Call your shorts channel up the Puba's shorts. Oh, make it about him. Up the peace be upon him shorts. Up the Puba's shorts. Why don't we hear more about Dan Gibson's theory about Muslims facing the wrong direction when praying? Watch The Sacred City and read his books. Yeah, so the issue there is, according to Dan Gibson, early mosques were facing a different city. So they're supposed to be facing Mecca, so that when you line up to pray, you're actually, even though you're in a mosque in some other country, you're still facing Mecca. Dan Gibson has argued that the early mosques are facing a different place. They're facing Petra. So this calls into question the history of early Islam. I can't talk about, I can't say what other people think. Me personally, it's a situation where I would want to verify it. So in other words, I would want to be actually looking up latitude and longitude coordinates and stuff like this and verifying everything. And even then the implication, when I think what the takeaway is, if you believed that these mosques were facing a different city, the conclusion would not be necessarily that Islam is false. The conclusion would be that some of the early history of Islam was rewritten to make it Mecca-centric, let's say, to make Mecca the center. It wouldn't necessarily mean that Islam isn't about Muhammad, or you don't have to believe in Muhammad. It would just mean that people, some of the early guys rewrote it and changed it to Mecca. So the point is, it would cause problems for them explaining. It would cause problems for them. It would cause doubts if that much of their religion was rewritten. But it wouldn't necessarily falsify Islam. So I tend to focus on things that I think are falsifying Islam. But this can be, what Dan Gibson has argued, can be combined with more skeptical approaches of people like Jay Smith and Robert Spencer, who don't just have that issue. They think that the entire early history of Islam was all fabricated. But that's a very expanded argument. And here we have Beatrice. Why not videos in Arabic? What do you mean? Why am I not making videos in Arabic? Or why aren't they making videos in Arabic? I'm not making videos in Arabic because I don't speak Arabic. Now, if you're asking why Jai and Daughter of Christ don't make videos in Arabic, they may. I don't know. But that's not my call. All right, so we wanted to get, before we close out, wanted to get back to this video of Sneeko. For those of you who saw what we just saw about the different Qurans and how they're selected and what some of these differences are, I wanted to just revisit our good friend Sneeko when he showed up to Speaker's Corner. And Sneeko shares what he's been learning from the Dawah guys. Sneeko shares what he was learning from the Dawah guys. Watch what happens when Chris starts giving him just some basic information about the Quran.
Hello there. Are you Sneeko? Yeah. It's good to meet you. I'm a Christian.
It's funny that he asks, is that Sneeko? So he doesn't actually know him by sight. He just heard this guy's Sneeko. And he's like,
All right, do you mind if I have a dialogue? All right, brother. Hello. We got a Christian but ethno-nationalist over there. Will you be interested? You know who? Yeah, with the ribbon. And...
Not sure why someone's trying to veer Chris away from Sneeko. You definitely want to address Sneeko if he's there.
Oh. He looks Jewish up there. Hey, let's talk. Sure. You see? Sure.
That's funny. Then Sneeko tries to put him over there. Hey, that guy's Jewish over there. What he's doing.
So I was wondering what your perspective was about the preservation of the Bible and the Quran. Right, the Quran has never been changed. Never been changed. So there's only one Quran. Yeah, there's only one version of the Quran. Only one version of the Quran. Yeah, and since then, like, people have been able to recite it, even if all the Qurans were burned, we'd be able to. Right. Because the old.
Did you hear every single thing he just said? It is standard Dawah script. This is why it's a problem, ladies and gentlemen. This is why it's a massive problem. Everything Sneeko just said is like the first thing that Dawah guys will feed to a new to either a person they're trying to get to convert or a person who has converted. Only one Quran. If you destroyed every Quran in the world, they'd be able to put it back together just from memory because so many people have it memorized. It's all complete, insane, idiotic nonsense. It's lie. But this is what they feed to them anyway. Now, let me back that up slightly just so we don't miss anything that's been said, but my goodness, watch what happens to Sneeko here.
Yeah, and since then, like, people have been able to recite it, even if all the Qurans were burned, we'd be able to. Right, because the oral tradition, you know exactly what it is, so you can recite it. Oh, I can't recite it, but people can memorize it. Yeah. Right. Yeah, brothers can. So, do you accept that there's 10 qira'at of the Quran, 10 different readings? Sure.
Do you accept that there are 10 different readings? Sure. Sneeko has no clue what he's talking about. He's about to say that this is the first time hearing about this, but he just says, sure. That's some sort of personality thing. I've heard that Sneeko's like this. You can just start saying things and he'll just agree. Yeah, sure. Great point. Yeah. Ooh, you've given me a lot to think about. But I mean, he just said one Quran. Then this guy says, but what about the 10 qira'at? Oh yeah, sure. Let me back that up. This is amazing stuff.
Oh, I can't recite it, but people can memorize it. Yeah. Right. Yeah, brothers can. So, do you accept that there's 10 qira'at of the Quran, 10 different readings? Sure. Okay, but those 10 different readings are obviously different, right? Okay. So if they're...
Sneeko just said only one Quran. If all the Qurans in the world disappeared, we could put it together because there's only one Quran. He made the claim. He heard from the Dawah guys. Then Chris says, do you accept that there are 10 qira'at? Sure. Do you accept that there are differences? Okay. It's amazing stuff.
There's 10 qira'at.
You know what this reminds me of? Sneeko was on with Destiny, and Sneeko now is a defender of child marriage because Muhammad taught it and he defends it. But then when he was live with Destiny, he had all the building blocks in his head as Destiny's asking him questions about why pedophilia would be wrong. Everything Sneeko said would make Muhammad wrong. He's saying children are not capable of consent, things like this. And it's everything you would need to condemn Muhammad, and yet he's accepting all of this. He's accepting everything that's... It's like what he's doing here. Only one Quran. Okay, do you accept that there are 10 different qira'at? Yeah. Do you accept that there are differences? Sure. I don't know what to do. Like, what do you do when someone has a belief in their head and you actually show them and they agree with you? Yes. Here are all the things that show that is false. And yet I agree with both of them. It's weird thinking.
Of the Quran, 10 different readings. Sure. Okay, but those 10 different readings are obviously different, right? Okay. So if they're different, then there's not one Quran, there's 10 Qurans. Okay. So
there are 10 Qurans. Okay. There's one Quran. That's right. There's one Quran. Hey, so there are 10 Qurans. Okay. This is amazing. I don't know what to do. I don't even know what to do here. Once you've thrown out basic logic and you are willing to accept the idea that, yes, I can have in my head that child marriage is perfectly acceptable and that child marriage is a horrible abomination and should be punished. Once you can accept there's only one Quran perfectly preserved and simultaneously there are 10 Qurans and they're different and you don't see a problem, I don't know what to do. It's like having an argument or discussion with someone where you're trying to prove something. Believing in logic is kind of like the price of admission. Like if you don't believe in logic, if you believe contradictions are okay, then how do you even proceed? Because you could prove that someone is completely wrong. If the person just says, okay, you're right, when you show that he's completely wrong and he still believes whatever he says that you've just proven wrong, and he just believes both, like what do you even do at that point? But that's Dawah.
You take that back, there's only one Quran? That's the first time I've heard that. Well, no, I mean, I sent it to you, you accepted it, so I assume you know about it, right? You're not just taking my word for it. What are the 10 versions? No, so there's different citations, just like there's different accents. There's a British accent, there's a Texas accent, there's a...
Did you catch that, guys? What did he do? Sneeko believes that there's only one Quran. Sneeko believes there's only one Quran. Chris says, hey, there are 10 different Qira'at, 10 different readings, and they're different. They're not the same. Sneeko says this is the first time he's heard of it. Another Dawah guy, so he's sort of Sneeko's Dawah handler while he's there at Speaker's Corner, meaning, hey, someone needs to keep their eye on Sneeko because these guys are going to produce some doubt, so you have to step in when necessary. So this guy steps in and he gives the standard Dawah lie. These are just accents. It's just different accents. And he's talking, oh, you know, the British accent, there's an Australian accent. People have different accents. That's what these different Qira'at are. Guys, we looked during this live stream. We went through some of the different Qira'at. Some of them give contradictory. You go to one version, it says that Lot's wife stayed behind in the city. They all left except Lot's wife. You go to another version, Lot's wife left with them, but then she died. So guess what? Those are contradictory. Is that a different accent? Like, oh, you got a British accent and I've got an American accent? No. Is this guy lying? Yeah. Lying to who? Sneeko. Why? To keep him in a state of believing that there is only one Quran. This guy Chris presents information, factual information. No, there isn't one Quran. There are different Qurans. This guy jumps in. Oh, yeah, it's just different accents. Is it different accents? No. Now watch what this guy does. Watch what this guy does. Let's back it up. Let's back it up a little. Here we go.
It's different, right? Okay. So if they're different, then there's not one Quran, there's 10 Qurans. Okay. So do you take that back? There's only one Quran?
That's the first time I've heard that.
Well, no, I mean, I sent it to you, you accepted it, so I assume you know about it, right? You're not just taking my word for it.
What are the 10 versions? No, so there's different citations, just like there's different accents. There's a British accent, there's a Texas accent, there's an English accent.
They're not accents.
So they're different accents. Chris says they're not accents. Watch what happens. Watch what happens. Don't want anyone to miss this. Backing it up. I can watch this 100 times.
Versions? No, so there's different citations, just like there's different accents. There's a British accent, there's a Texas accent, there's an English accent.
They're not accents.
Different accent. Who are you going to believe, a Muslim or a Christian?
So really?
Did you guys catch that? Because again, guys, given everything we've seen, I do not know how you would ever believe a word that comes out of that guy's mouth again. Ever. Until he repented, apologized, came back and said, this is why I was lying. This is why I repent. I thought it was acceptable to just make things up and lie constantly, but I've changed now. And here's the proof that I've changed my ways. I would never believe anything that guy says again. Sneeko, I could, because he just seems like pretty dopey and he's trying to learn on his way and he has a problem with basic logic and so on. But doesn't mean he's deliberately being deceptive. He's finding out this information. The guy who's with him, total liar. And look at what he just did. Sneeko has a belief, which he's been getting. Sneeko didn't get this by doing a bunch of studying. He didn't read a bunch of books. He didn't read the history of the Quran. He listened to the Dawah guys. He listened to Sheikh Uthman. He listened to this guy who's with him. He listened to them. One Quran, perfectly preserved. Chris walks up to him, gives him just some basic information, the sort of thing that he would discover if he studied 5 minutes on his own instead of just listening to the Dawah liars. Just that little bit of information. What is this? What is this about 10 Qurans? Guy steps in. Oh, it's just different accents. Chris points out it's not different accents. You've got contradictory meanings. You have different meanings. You have different words, different letters. This isn't a British accent versus an American accent. It's different meanings of different verses, different words, different letters. And what's the guy say? Who are you going to believe, a Christian or a Muslim? What's the takeaway? Sneeko is being trained not to listen to the people who are telling him the truth. He's being conditioned to only listen to liars. Shame on you if you don't listen to a liar. You can only listen to liars. Do not, under any circumstances, listen to the people who are telling you the truth. And that's part of Dawah. You get someone, deceive them, and then rapidly condition them to not listen to anyone who tells them the truth. This is Dawah. This is Dawah in a nutshell. Let's back this up. And we're not going to go through this entire clip. I just wanted to share that so that in light of the rest of this live stream where we've gone through the differences and all the problems in the history of the Quran, that this is what they end up with.
Well, no, I mean, I sent it to you, you accepted it, so I assume you know about it, right? You're not just taking my word for it.
What are the 10 versions? No, so there's different citations, just like there's different accents. There's a British accent, there's a Texas accent, there's an English accent.
They're not accents.
Different accent. Who are you going to believe, a Muslim or a Christian?
So, really? Is that what it boils down to? Just believe.
The difference between the Qur'an? Like,
yeah, of course. So there's a famous one. Muhammad Jab will tell you this. Because I had a chat with him about it. So you have, in Surah Al-Fatiha, you have Ayah 4. I think it's Ayah 4. Ayah 4 yeah, so Malik al-Madin or Malik al-Madin, owner or king in Arabic. They're two different words. So if you want to read up about this, you can get a book called the 10 Qira'at of the Noble Quran by Dr. Fadal.
That's a Muslim publication, by the way. It's a Muslim publication. They put it all together. Once the cat's out of the bag and people start finding out, no, we got all these different Qurans. Like, okay, well, let's put them all together so people can actually read them.
Man who worked for the Bridges Foundation in Cairo, which is a Dawah institute, and he's wrote a book about it where he translates the Quran into English, but not just in one reading. He does it for all 10. So you can read the differences in the Quran for all different 10 valid readings according to Islamic scholars.
Great.
Cool. So do you accept then that the Quran is not perfectly preserved?
No, I'll read that book and I'll see if that's...
Does anyone think that Sneako's actually going to read that book? Does anyone think that his Dawah handlers are going to even allow him to read a book that exposes them as liars? Of course not. That's why Sneako's kind of a dream convert. Get him. He's popular. He's got a big following. We get access to all his fans so that we can lie to them. And this guy will just mindlessly agree with anything we point out to him. Now, the problem is when someone walks up to him and says there are 10 Qurans, he'll just agree with that. He'll agree with that too. And so we have to keep him insulated. And that's why he was told not to go to Speaker's Corner. He was told by the other Dawah guys. He didn't listen. He went there. So they're gonna keep a tighter lid on Sneako in the future. Make sure he doesn't go out there and get accurate information. But guys, just think about that. There's Sneako, new revert. How did they win that revert? Lying to him. Lie. All they did was lie to him. Fill his head with lies. Then Sneako's going out to Speaker's Corner. Well, you need a handler with him. Need some handlers with him because he's going to be exposed to people who are telling him the truth. Can't have that. So what are you going to do? So he hears something that contradicts what his Dawah guys have been telling him. Dawah guys were telling him one Quran. Chris from Speaker's Corner walks up. Actually, not one Quran. There's way more than that, but we're talking about like the official ones. There's 10. And tells him, hey, did you know there are 10 Qurans and they have differences? What does the Dawah guy say? What does the Dawah handler say? Oh, no, it's just like different accents. Meaning, hey, Sneako, don't think that this new information contradicts what we've told you. It's just different accents. That's not a problem. You wouldn't think if I said, hey, let's go to the store, and someone else said it with a British accent, let's go to the store. You wouldn't say that's a difference, right? It's just different accents. So he tries to convince Sneako that's all the differences are. And Chris there gives an actual example. Even in Surah 1, which Muslims recite over and over again during their daily prayers, there's a textual variant even there. Some say king, some say owner. That by itself, that's what I mean by even learning one example can be devastating. Because that one example, king or owner, that is not a different accent. That's not a British versus American accent. It's a different word. It's a different word. So it exposes the lie. And then what's the guy say? No, who are you going to believe? Who are you going to believe? You going to believe them? But here's the guy. He's the one who's lying. And he understands his job is to condition Sneako, to make him not listen to someone who's telling the truth. That's what Dawah is. It's deceiving people and then conditioning them so that they never accept anyone else who's telling them the truth. It's sick. It's sick and it's evil. And I would say it's demonic. And we've got our work cut out for us because this is what we're up against. All right, just wanted to share that. Just wanted to share that information with everyone else. Take a couple super chats, then we'll be out. Marie Mack says, check out the Squishies YouTube channel. Uthman ibn Farouk admits Muhammad never existed. He is asked for archaeological evidence and runs away. That's interesting. And guys, keep in mind, I believe that Muhammad existed. I believe in the general time frame, but I see some problems in the historical narrative. One of the big ones is Mecca doesn't seem to be an important city. You don't find it on ancient maps, and yet it's supposedly this big trade hub in the early Muslim sources. Two, even if you look at the trade route, so supposedly people cut across and go to Mecca, and then they cut up, and it's like there was a direct trade route. Why would anyone cut over to Mecca and then go up? It doesn't make any sense that this is even on a trade route. So you have issues like that that just don't make a lot of sense. And Muhammad is supposedly going around challenging everyone in Arabia, fighting everyone in Arabia, and challenging the Roman Emperor and challenging and challenging everyone. We have historical writings from that time. No one's heard of this guy. He's not an issue. According to Muhammad, according to the Muslim sources, the entire world's panicking about this new Arabian prophet. What are we going to do about this Arabian prophet? Oh, he's going to take over the world. We all know he's a true prophet because we're all reading our sources and we know he's a true prophet. You go to the sources of the time, no one's ever heard of the guy. So there are problems. There are problems. I still believe he existed because I'm looking at other historical principles, like the principle of embarrassment. If you are a later leader and you decide you want to invent a religion, there's lots of stuff in the Muslim sources that make no sense for someone to invent. It's a principle of embarrassment. If you're going to invent things, you're going to invent things that help your case, not things that hurt your case. And the Muslim sources are filled with stories and information that cause massive doubts about Muhammad. And so why would you invent the story of the satanic verses? We know it was totally embarrassing. They eventually scrubbed it from their sources. Why would you invent that? So I believe that he was a historical figure because of things like that. But Muslims aren't going to use the principle of embarrassment. Muslims aren't going to say, of course we know Muhammad existed because he did all this sick stuff. He must have existed to do all this sick stuff. If we were inventing him, we wouldn't have made up all this sick, evil stuff that he did. They can't use the principle of embarrassment. So how do you, as a Muslim, actually defend Muhammad's existence? You run. That's what you do. Like, I don't believe that Sheikh Uthman would have an actual, formal debate with someone, period. But I don't think he would ever have a debate with, like, Jay Smith or Robert Spencer. I actually tried to defend Muhammad's existence. I believe I'm right, but it's hard. Given that it's hard because you don't have any early sources. That's a nightmare. And this is the case elsewhere in history. You don't always have early sources for someone, but it makes it really hard to argue. You have to rely on secondary historical principles and so on. So it's a hard case to make. And if you don't have something like the principle of embarrassment, I don't know how you could argue that Muhammad even existed, or at least that he was like what you think of as Muhammad. So yeah, it's a problem. Would not be surprised to have Sheikh Uthman run away. And I don't think you'll have any of the Dawah guys willing to debate that with someone like Robert Spencer or Jay Smith. Dawah guys, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. I defend the existence of Muhammad more than the Dawah guys do. And that's a weird situation. They can't do it. Sneeko tried to pull perfect preservation in the debate with Destiny. Really? I haven't watched that full discussion. I only watched the part with about child brides. He tried to pull... Wait a minute. Miss Weasel. Sneeko tried to pull the perfect preservation in his debate with Destiny. So let me get this straight. I want to find this. Someone send me the link if you can, or the timestamp. Someone send me the timestamp from the video with Destiny if you can. Because if Sneeko did that after going to Speaker's Corner, that's a character issue, right? That's not a knowledge issue. If he went to Speaker's Corner, talked to Chris said, I'll give you an example of a difference between two Qurans, and there are lots of them. And there are different Qurans. Therefore, people who are telling you one Quran have been lying to you. If Sneeko heard that, and then later goes with Destiny and says, yep, perfect preservation right down to the letter, that's a problem. That's a problem. That would give me a more negative view of Sneeko. Keep in mind, so I've never viewed Sneeko as like evil. He seems like a young guy who got really popular and did what lots of young guys would do if they got extreme popularity. Used it, lots of money, go around messing around with lots of girls. I get all that. It means you got too famous to handle for young. It's bad. It's bad if you're a young guy and you get too famous. You get messed up. But that doesn't mean that you're like an evil deceiver or something like that. And with his comments about Christianity and Islam, it's okay. He's really gullible. He's really gullible. Anytime some Dawah guy comes along and tells him something, he just mindlessly agrees with it, even if it's obviously stupid and wrong. He says things when he has no clue what he's talking about. Oh, the book of the Council of Nicaea was taken out of the Bible. And he has no clue what he's talking about. And he babbles about things that he has no clue what he's talking about. So you've got these kinds of problems. But if he's the person who can find out that he was lied to, and then he will still go and spread it, that changes things. So yeah, I'd want to see that. Might want to actually cover that in a live stream or make a video out of it or something. I've got Ian here. No comment, but thank you, Ian. Reading books. What are you, a weakling? A female? Yeah, that would be the Andrew Tate said that reading books is for losers. Apostate Joe Smith said, peace be upon me, and add this to your translation fund. If that doesn't work out, just hit me up. I have a rock and a hat, and I'm not afraid to use them. What translation fund are you talking about? Kitab al-Masahif, Ibn Abi Daud. Yeah, I need to basically find, and I have had some people along the way who said they could do it. I've never really pursued it very much. It is something I want to do before I'm dead. I want to get, just because this was something that me and Nabil agreed a long time ago. You're talking like 2007, 2008, somewhere in there. We said one of our life's goals is to get Kitab al-Masahif translated. I would like someone else to actually do that, like some publication company to actually go out and do that. If it does not happen, it's something I have to do. Just, it's a matter of personal honor thing. We agreed we were going to do it, and it hasn't happened yet. But yeah, I need a team. You'd want actual professional translators, so you don't want just some random guys, because the meaning of Arabic words and phrases can change or be modified over time. So you don't want just someone who knows Arabic doing the translation. They can get things wrong. So you need someone who actually knows like the Arabic of that time and so on, and probably a team so they can check it. You need the whole translation done. But I have had people saying they could put it together. But yeah, I'd have to do it. I'll probably at some point get a team. I don't know if that's going to be 3 people, 5 people, or 7 people or whatever who are going to work on the translation. But I'll find out what it's going to cost. Like how much it's going to cost for you to translate this entire thing and then get this in print, and then probably do a fundraiser and get the whole thing covered, and then we all have it. It'd be cool too, because then we can just release it on the internet and also have it in hard copy for people who want a hard copy. And let's see, Z-Beam, thanks for the last super chat here. Rap artist from Australia would love to create a rap song with you. Put some bite-sized apologetics to get the truth out there. Sample song on my channel. That is Z-Beam. I'm going to take a screenshot there. Not everyone who says they're a rapper is a good rapper, but yeah, wouldn't mind being in some songs. Wouldn't mind some cool apologetic songs, especially involving Prophet Muhammad, doing some fresh rhymes. So yeah, we can work on something. All right, guys. So yeah, wanted to get this out with, there's mentioned this a bit earlier, but there are people like me, and I can quote the Muslim sources on the history of the Quran. As far as different qira'at, I can look at look at the translations and so on, but to have people break down the Arabic, that's where you need people like Jai and Daughter of Christ and so on. Lots of other. You have the channels like Rob Christian and Christian Prince and so on, and they can do this stuff. But needs to be a lot of this. Needs to be a lot of exposing the differences in the Quran, because we want every lie of every Dawah guy to break down. We want them all exposed, and we got to be relentless. All right. What is this? Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at some of the other comments. I thought they were directed towards me. It wasn't. All right, ladies and gentlemen. I think I'll be back with Robert tomorrow for This Week in Jihad. I think AP wants to go live on Thursday. We'll see what happens. I actually have some clips that I got ready for Sunday. Had some clips that I got ready for Sunday of some current events that I wanted to go through, and we ended up covering Bishop Marmari Emmanuel, because he came back that day and had no idea, so we went through his sermon and so on. I'm going to see if AP can fit it into a schedule to go through some of those clips, because some of those were kind of time sensitive. In other words, it's like circulating news that I would like to discuss. So we'll see. We'll see when we can fit that in. All right, everyone. Again, go back through that presentation. Either, if you have the time, learn that stuff in general, even look up some of the sources and so on, become masters of that material. If you don't have time to learn all that material, learn something. Focus on learning one thing. What the information in one screenshot, the information about one verse, and share that. A bunch of people learning one thing and sharing it makes a world of difference. So whatever time you have available to you, whatever your level of knowledge, you can help expose the Dawah. All right. Should I play the song? I'm going to play the song.
Ain't gonna follow no child molester, sex offender, prophet pretender. Ain't gonna follow no child molester.
Islam's not for me. Islam's not for me.
Islam's not
for me.
Catch y'all next time.